Hi, welcome to the Pride of Detroit PODcast, prideofdetroit.com, Pride of Detroit on Twitter, Pride of Detroit on Facebook. You know where to find us. You know what we're about as we come to you live on twitch.tv/Pride of Detroit and on youtube.com/at Pride of Detroit every Sunday for the off season. Hope you enjoyed the midweek mailbag that came out actually late in the week, and the mini podcast we did with myself and Jeremy Reisman, who I'll introduce in a second properly, on DJ Reed. We're going to talk a lot about free agency, and we're starting off the top by asking a big question that I know some fans have been asking us and other people around there is if the Lions were aggressive enough for free agency for your tastes. We'll also break down a lot of the new players the Lions have signed, some of the re-signings they've made, and some of the departures and how that impacts the roster, and some more free agents that we're still eyeballing at the end. But first, I am Chris Perfett, the adequate host, at Chris Perfett on X, and on Blue Sky, find me at perfett.bsky.social. Jeremy Reisman, the fearless leader at Detroit Online, is here as well, finally ready once and for all to actually start watching Michigan basketball.
Yeah. You mean Big Ten tournament champion? Well, hold on.
How did that happen?
Under review. Another play's under review. Okay, yes, they are Big Ten champions. Yes, that did happen.
Cool. The man who takes not watching sports that aren't the NFL to some sort of like artistic level. I don't understand it.
I mean, the end of that game was brutal, but
it was awful. I mean, most college basketball is damn near unwatchable these days. Ryan Matthews at Ryan_POD. Not to introduce sad Sparty noises, because I do like the squad, and I do pull for Sparty in these kind of things, but they're still in the dance. So how are you doing?
Dude, Michigan, Wisconsin was brutal to watch. Are you kidding me?
Almost unwatchable.
What Wisconsin shot 22% from the field. Michigan shot 32%. Like, what
killed them?
Why have we turned to a game that just prioritizes layups and 3-pointers when you can't shoot 3-pointers? Stop. It's awful.
It's the worst of all worlds. It is.
Good luck Michigan in the first round. I'm betting on whoever they're playing. It's like some California team.
That would be UC San Diego.
First half money line.
Also UC San Diego as well, getting into the dance on a very controversial call over UC Irvine.
First half spread. I don't care. Whatever. Hashtag
all
hell.
right. Enough of the crappy sport. Let's talk about the real man's sport, which is the NFL. Ryan, by the way, for those on the podcast, has a can I read what's on your whiteboard?
Absolutely.
Manifest Rogers #skull. And he did the clap. You can't hear it because Zoom cuts that stuff out. Let's turn to the Lions, though, now that has been placed in front of us. We've got plenty of new signings to talk about. We've got plenty of new Lions to talk about. But I guess the first question is, because it's all I heard from fans this week, was a lot of concern about, were the Lions really aggressive enough in this free agency period? For a lot of people, once again, this is the spend now, attack now, go now, push all the chips in the table now area of the Lions regime. They see the rest of the NFC North getting better. In fact, the Bears and the Vikings were both fairly active in free agency. The Bears aggressively so, because they had the cap space and had to rebuild the offensive line. But I think we do this a little bit every year, in that we get to March, big names start to fly off the shelf, and there's questions on why this isn't, why aren't the Lions more active? Why aren't they going after the big names out there? And I think the answer, Jeremy, and I know you'll have a much more complex answer than mine, but it always butts up against A, the realities of living in a salary cap sport, B, the fact that the Detroit Lions already have a fairly complete roster. And I think we have some Mike Silver grades to talk about on top of it. Mike Clay's grades to talk about on top of this too, with some of the additions, but also C, they just don't, most teams who spend big in March don't win at the end of the day either.
Yeah, I mean,
I know that's a cop-out answer, but it's kind of true. It's held up.
It is and it isn't, right? Like, a lot of national analysts like to throw this stat around that the last 6 teams that spent the most in free agency saw their win total jump by at least 3 games the next year. What they failed to do then is stretch it out beyond that and say, oh, those teams always seem to regress the following years. Free agency spending in general is a short-term move, bad in the long term, which is why you supplement with the draft, which is a good long-term move that keeps your cap low. So in general, I think spending in free agency, wild spending in free agency, is never as good as it seems. But when it comes to the Lions, it's just about maneuverability. You look at the cap space this year and you say, oh my God, they have 50 million, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, wow, that's great. I understand that's tempting to want to use it all. But the way NFL teams operate, the way general managers operate, is a multi-year view of the salary cap. You can't just focus on your 2025 cap space. You have to focus on your 2026 cap space. Because when you're signing these mega deals, you're signing them to multi-year deals. It's going to affect your cap beyond that. You could sign some of these guys to one-year deals, but that affects your ability to carry over cap. And so the one thing that I wanted to point out, a couple weeks ago I went on Twitter and said, hey, there are 4 teams right now that have 5 players earning $20 million a year or more. The Lions are one of those 4. The other are the Eagles, Dolphins, and Buccaneers. Those are guys who have a lot of their cap being taken up by a small amount of players. Guess how active any of those teams were in free agency? The Eagles got decimated. They lost like 5 guys that are going to net them compensatory picks. The Dolphins probably had the biggest deal out of the group, which was one big signing, James Daniel, guard for 3 years, $24 million. The Bucs, they had Hassan Reddick, a 1 year, $14 million deal. That's about it unless you count Kendall Vildor. All those teams spent their money extending their own players, and the Bucs can afford a 1 year, $14 million deal because they have projected $70 million in cap space next year. The Lions have $22 million in projected cap space next year.
And we still haven't signed up Aiden Hutchinson.
Still haven't signed Aiden Hutchinson. I mean,
Kirby Joseph,
the 2023 draft class. They have to think the long-term game in here. And so when you consider that the Lions did spend 3 years, $48 million on a cornerback, that's more of a splash move than any of these teams made. And so I know we don't consider it a splash move because they lost Carlton. It felt like treading water. And in a way, that's what free agency is going to be from now on. It's how much of your roster can you retain? How much can you tread water until you do what Brad Holmes has done for the first 4 years of his career, which is draft dudes, draft core pieces. That is what that part of the plan becomes even more important now that you are paying the guys that you drafted. You have to supplement those with small contracts, and that's what every team is doing. I know we tend to hyper-focus on the Lions and the NFC North, but look across the league. The teams that have those high-priced guys taking up the majority of their cap, they are not spending in free agency.
I mean, you look at that 2021 draft class. 5 guys. Penei Sewell, Levi Onwuzurike, who we're going to get to in a minute, Aleem McNeil, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Derek Barnes. That's 5 guys from Brad Holmes' first draft class. And then the 2022 class is going to have a bunch of guys that are going to sign extensions that we already talked about. Aiden Hutchinson, Kirby Joseph. I mean, Jameson Williams. I mean, maybe we get to the 5th-year option with him. And then the 2023 class. Like, there are a lot of homegrown talent that are going to either stay in Detroit or it's going to be eventually a Philadelphia situation, which we saw what happened in the offseason so far with free agency, where a lot of guys leaving, but they have to take care of their own. The Lions are taking care of their own right now. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they got DJ Reed, who we'll talk about in a minute, we got him to the Lions signed him to the deal that they got him to. It seems like a splashy move. Like, it's one of the biggest signings that Brad Holmes has made in free agency to this date. And it's at a position that we talked about being a very important position that he still took care of. Because the one big point I want to make, Chris, is that you look at a team like the Detroit Lions, and if we want to take it out to a macro level, mm-hmm. did the Detroit Tigers, did they get Alex Bregman?
No, they did not.
They did not. Did the Red Wings make a big move at the trade deadline to make their team better? No, they didn't.
Well, they also collapsed before the trade deadline, but sure.
No, stop. don't pick on the Detroit Red Wings. They still had a chance at the trade deadline. But
Detroit basketball.
my big point at a macro level is that the Detroit Lions are one of the teams that are best situated for the future of any of the Detroit franchises. Like the Pistons, they have a great player, but like with the Detroit Lions, they are a team that is built from within through the draft. And for all of the people who are losing their minds over how other teams are winning free agency, I don't want to say that the whole raise the banner, you won free agency thing, that's a little bit, it swung too far the other way. But at the same time, like there's something to be said about how the Detroit Lions are strategically taking care of their team from within.
I think if we can sum it up in one sentence, when you draft as well as someone like Brad Holmes, it means you can't spend as much to get outside free agents because you drafted so well and you have to retain all of those guys that you drafted so well.
Who was the last Detroit Lions general manager who has drafted as well as Brad Holmes? I know it's albeit a small sample size, but at the same time, like you can kind of look forward in the future for 22 and 23. Like what Lions general manager in the history of this franchise has put together 3 consecutive classes of players of this caliber? Like it's not even comparable.
And I do want to say he has drafted well because I've heard some people trying to like throw revisions at me because they see Broderick Martin and they see like well, yeah,
come on.
We can't. I don't know
what are we doing.
Right.
Well,
the one thing that I think is really getting people's hackles up for this is not like, I don't think everyone thinks, oh, they should have gone out and grabbed Trey Hendricks and whatever, like the big names. I think part of the concern is that they didn't improve the positions that they thought they needed to, right?
And it comes right as they release Darius Smith right before free agency opens up as well, which suddenly that edge position suddenly a big, a giant question mark.
They don't. The only addition they make on the defensive line in total is a backup nose tackle. They lose a key guy on their offensive line, and so like I get that there's a little bit of consternation about the trenches. We know the game is won in the trenches, and the Lions have not gotten better on either side of the trenches this offseason. Now, there's still a big piece of the puzzle coming in the draft, and there's still 2-3 weeks of active free agency coming, and I want to see that whole thing play out. But I think that is at least a little bit of a nugget where people, I think, are rightfully concerned, but at the same time, you manage to keep everything else together. Your wide receiver core is there. Your quarterback's there. Your running backs are there. Your linebackers are better than before. Your corners are arguably better than before. Your safeties are still amazing. And you just have to take the entire scope of the team. If the only places you stepped back were a 34-year-old guard and a 32-year-old edge, you did pretty well for where your roster is right now.
Yeah, we need to jump into DJ Reed, but I guess the last note on that is... And I've already completely forgotten my point. I think. Oh, no. I. Yeah, I've still completely forgotten it.
Sorry.
We could just I had it and I just let it go. I'm sorry for those watching us live. This is all going to be cut out. God, what was my point? I don't even remember what the point was now.
We should just jump to...
Yeah. Okay. Give me a second. I'll reset it to Reed. Damn it. I had such a great point too. And it just, fuck. All right, let's talk about DJ Reed. Let's talk about the new Lions corner and talk about some of these signings that they have made. So, it looks like, the Lions have actually lost a couple of corners in Carlton Davis and Kindle Vildor. And we'll talk about some of the depth thing there. I know Lions fans, I know a lot of them are happy to see Vildor leave. I don't get the excitement myself. He's good depth. I understand he has kind of an albatross of a play that haunts him, but that's neither here nor there. DJ Reed, though, big contract for the Detroit Lions. 3 years, and I believe $48 million. I believe we have to see how it breaks down, of course. but he looks like he'll slot right in and just replace Carlton Davis. We did a little bit of a mini podcast on it, so I guess I'll kick it over to Ryan on what you thought of this play before we start breaking down the roster implications of DJ Reed and some of his comments he made in the presser this weekend.
This was the transaction that I don't think many of us had anticipated, because we felt like if the Lions were going to spend on a cornerback, it was going to be Carlton Davis, until we found out from Dave Burkett that Carlton Davis had kind of priced himself out. So it felt like if the Lions were going to sign a cornerback, it was going to be somebody who was going to command less money than Carlton Davis, and DJ Reed was not one of those guys. I mean, there were a list of those guys that we did not feel that were going to be as inexpensive as Carlton Davis, and DJ Reed was not one of those guys, and lo and behold, he was. I will say that I'm rather happy with this signing. I'm actually pretty darn happy in terms of A, term and cost, and then B, on top of that, like, I think they got a really good player. And I know I did 6 questions with the deputy manager over at Gangrene Nation, McGregor Wells, and I think one of the most revealing things that he mentioned was DJ Reed was oftentimes lining up across from the other team's best wide receiver, because Sauce Gardner was playing a side of the field.
Yep.
So while Sauce Gardner played a side of the field, opposing offenses would try to get a wide receiver on the side that Sauce wasn't on, and DJ Reed had some pretty darn good seasons playing opposite of Sauce Gardner. So the Lions have cornered the market on undersized cornerbacks when it comes to him and Amik Robertson. Yeah. But Jeremy, it really doesn't matter when you have a guy who has ball skills. And I know that some people will look at interception numbers, and he didn't have one last year. And, the penalties that I think people will kind of wring their hands about, or maybe there will be a 97.1 radio host who might say something like, oh, DJ Reed plays zone corner more than he plays man corner. And that's wrong, too.
I mean, it's technically true, but every Lions cornerback also played more zone than man. That's not the, like...
Yeah, I think we covered this exact point on the mini pod, yes.
DJ Reed played more man coverage than over half of the qualifying cornerbacks in the NFL. So he's just well and fine equipped to play man coverage, Jeremy. But when you look at the way that the cornerback market played itself out, the Detroit Lions, it feels like they got a win in DJ Reed.
No question. I mean, to add on to what you were saying too, DJ Reed was talking about how he would have to sometimes mirror and travel with the best corner best receiver if that receiver was someone like Tyreek Hill, right? Because they wanted Sauce being on the bigger, taller guy, and so now they kind of have that same approach going. They don't have a true like tall physical guy, but like I think that would be Terrion. Terrion's not small by most standards. He's 5'11", almost 6 foot. So they're able to have essentially the exact same dynamic where if they want to play man straight up, if they want to play sides, they can do that. They'll play a lot of zone. He's really good in zone too, but he's also really sticky in man. I mean, I came away very impressed looking at that guy's film, with the way he covered deep, with the way he covered crossing routes, with the way he communicated. He has a history as a safety, so he knows how the entire defense works. He knows how to communicate. And then talking to him, he also just an impressive human being, man. Like he came from humble beginnings, and you can tell that he approaches the NFL the best way. Part of a story I wrote today was him talking about how much he learned about the game from Bobby Wagner and prehab, rehab, all that sort of stuff. He tore his pectoral one off season and was able to come back and play. I think it was 8 games. Like that alone. That's pretty,
damn impressive.
He's a dog.
That's damn.
And so, I think during our pre-podcast, I was like, why would you sign DJ Reed when you have Carlton Davis at home? Well, now it's kind of like flipped on its head. Like, why would you have re-signed Carlton Davis when you can have DJ Reed at home for, $2 million less a year?
Yeah.
I also really like. Oh, sorry, Ron.
No, I was just going to say, we didn't think that was a possibility.
Right.
We thought DJ Reed was going to be up in the, 3 years, $60 million that Carlton Davis got.
And I like him as a culture fit too. He's talking
Yes.
about like, yeah, he's the kind of guy. He's like, he says most corners don't want to tackle, they want to cover. I want to tackle. He wants to play physical, which I'm sure sounds like great news to this Lions coaching staff. And he really hyped up Terry and Arnold. I think he called him like a Pro Bowl, All Pro type of guy with some good development. I think he'll be a great mentor for Terry and Arnold. And like, just in general, once again, it seems like the Lions are getting a really high character guy on top of everything else with DJ Reed. It just
Can,
keeps adding to that locker room.
can I share a number, Chris, for what you just said?
Yeah.
DJ Reed while in man coverage. So this is something I kind of unearthed that, I was digging in the DJ Reed numbers and I was just kind of curious. He had 8 defensive stops in man coverage, which was that was like close to tops among quarterbacks in the NFL. The only guy who was ahead of him was Amik Robertson with 10. And this is you're in man coverage, you make a play after the catch.
Right.
And it's Amik Robertson and it's DJ Reed. Some other guys, Brian Branch was 6 at his position at safety. Number 1 amongst linebackers, Alex Anzalone. Like they have guys who are in their back end of their defense who are sure tacklers. And they're guys who play sticky coverage against their assignments and they make tackles that limit explosive plays. DJ Reed doesn't give up many explosive plays. Alex Anzalone, clearly Brian Branch, it doesn't happen. So like they have this defense that's kind of built to limit those explosives. And then you look at the other side of the ball that they've taken care of on offense. So I really like the DJ Reed signing. It's a good signing.
I love it. Can we move on to let's move on to another guy before we got a little bit
Well,
of
you
time
want to
here.
talk about the rest of the cornerback room real quick?
Sure. Actually, yeah, that's a great point. So again, I kind of mentioned it. So the Lions lose Carlton Davis. They also lost Kendall Vildor,
Yeah.
who signed elsewhere. So it is in a bit of in a deficit right now. So that kind of gives us Rakestraw, who's a slot, and still a lot of a wild card considering how much he was injured last year. You've got Terry and Arnold. You got DJ Reed.
Amik.
I'm for Amik, and
then Stanley Thomas Oliver. That's it.
Yeah,
STO.
getting down to guys who were like playing the final weeks of the season when it was real grim. Yeah.
Right. And so there's definitely room for an addition or two, a veteran or two. I think the most obvious signing is going to be Khalil Dorsey, their top gunner, a guy who filled in early in training camp when injuries were bugging the Lions at the cornerback position and looked fine. But I feel like there's another, because we looked at that position last year and it just looked like an embarrassment of riches, right? Like you were hopeful that Emmanuel Mosley would come in and do something. You had Kendall Vildor, who was going to be your like 6 or 7 at the time. Right now, Kendall Vildor would be 4 or 5 on this roster. So they need to fill that out a little bit. I don't know, Ryan, do you think there's any chance they bring back Mosley for opportunity number 3, or do they need to go find someone else for a couple $1 million and just bring them in?
I mean, they signed Marcus Davenport. Like
anything is possible if you re-sign Marcus Davenport.
It's Chris's devil that you know versus the devil that you don't, and I mean, they have 4 corners though, and I feel really good about their 4.
Yes.
DJ Reed, Terry and Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, Meek Robertson.
Yeah.
I feel really good about those 4 guys. Beyond that, then you start to fill in with the Khalil Dorseys of the world and the guys who are more so special teamers, but like in a pinch. And that's why I like the Kendall Vildor signing. People poo-pooing on Kendall Vildor, Chris. Like I get it. Like you want to because of one play, but at the same time,
it's a memorable play. It sucks. Like everyone thinks about it. I get it, but
it's just unfair to the guy. Like you take a look at the whole body of work and take a look at the guy fits in. Like you almost wash away any good plays, Jeremy, that he made.
Right.
Just because of one bad play that happened in San Francisco.
To be fair, he was he also had one really bad game this past year.
The Indianapolis game was really bad.
Yes.
It was really bad.
But again,
the rest
we're
of the
down,
season, not terrible.
But again,
Agreed.
too, it's like, he's depth for a reason. We're not asking him to go out there and stand on the head either. Like it's what you could do. There are some guys available that you could probably have, like again, Khalil Dorsey and it just leaves a bit of a hole right now.
Yeah. And to be fair, like Vildor cost the Buccaneers 1 year $1.3 million. Like nothing.
Not
like,
anything.
Vet minimum.
Like a veteran minimum, yeah.
Right, exactly. And so the Lions could have afforded that, but they clearly made a decision to move on, which to me tells me that there should be at least one veteran signing coming. And I don't think it's going to be a big one. I don't think it's going to be, Stephon Gilmore if he's still out there. I don't even know if he is. But they should bring in someone that at least has some experience that can give them some peace of mind.
If we're talking about
defense.
that, I don't even think Jeff Okuda's on that idea. Like,
Oh, Jeff Okuda's
but like,
out
no,
there?
no, not even throw. I'm not even trying to throw a stray at him, but like, that's the free agents available is like Okuda, Rasul Douglas, Gilmore, maybe Tre'Davious White, Ronald Darby. Like, those are the names that are out there.
Those are guys that were great 7 years ago.
I know.
All of them.
Would you like a 30-year-old Eli Apple?
No, thank you.
It just this is where it gets tough. I mean,
Sure.
who knows? I could see see a late draft CB pickup in their future as well.
Oh, I mean, I think anything's on the table with the draft. I mean, a top corner is probably unlikely because you're settled for the next 3 years, but
Yeah, day three.
sure.
Let's move on. We got time for one more before we got to take a break. Roy Lopez, defensive tackle, signing with the Detroit Lions. Lopez was formerly with the Arizona Cardinals. He's a nose tackle. I'll just go out and just ask you real quick, Jeremy. Does this move the needle at all on their needs on the defensive line?
I mean, it moves a needle in that they've gone from Kyle Pecco to someone who's better than Kyle Pecco. If you want to call that an improvement, I mean, it is. I like Roy Lopez. The more I watched him, the more he impressed me in the run game. I think some of the statistics that you can bend that make him look like a good pass rusher are misleading. But he's not terrible at that. He's still going to mostly be a first and second down guy who I think the hope is that doesn't just improve your backup role, but the hope is that it improves DJ Reader by means of not wearing a 30-plus-year-old defensive tackle coming off of 2 major injuries out. So it's a step in the right direction. But if you're looking for an improvement on the defensive line pass rush, that wasn't it.
I'll say the 2 things that confirmed for me: 1, Broderick Martin. It was a good try. 2,
Yeah, he's not.
I know we want to maybe paint Lopez as being like a quote unquote backup, but truthfully, like I would love like a 60-40 split. You know what I mean? Like you get DJ Reader 60% and you get Lopez at 40%. Then you're getting DJ Reader, who is coming back, and we talk about this all the time. He has a year of not rehabbing, but a year of training, right? And he's not coming back from the injury. So hopefully this year, right, you get him and Lopez. I feel really good about the interior of the defensive line before we get to another guy we're going to talk about, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, Reader didn't play. I think like he was in training camp for a week.
Right. And missed early in the season and then eventually came back. Yeah.
Well, we got one other guy who might be in trouble as well. Speaking of Broderick Martin, too, considering another signing that might have
Broderick
put someone. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we just said that you don't miss. Brad Holmes doesn't miss much, but it just you do have a miss every now and then. Nobody bats 1,000.
Yeah, it was a Javier Baez swinging third strike. Yeah, it was tough, but it is what it is.
Someone who does bat 1,000, even though I said nobody does, is Righteous Felon Craft Jerky and Meat Sticks. Everything they make is just delicious. I need to refill my box. I have been on a very hardcore boxing regimen, and I do need some lean protein. And you know what? I'll get it in a bag of Righteous Felon because each 2-ounce bag of jerky has 16 to 20 grams of protein. Each meat stick has 8 grams. I am never good at stocking snacks. I am terrible at stocking snacks. It's not something I do. So let me tell you, we're going to stock some Righteous Felon because Righteous Felon, they're based in Westchester, Pennsylvania, locally sourced, all natural Black Angus beef, superior quality, revolutionary branding, unique flavors that go beyond the stereotypical jerky offering. And I'm going to get myself plenty of gochujang, Soul Survivor, spicy Korean barbecue. You know how that's done. Bourbon Franklin, the bourbon, that's typical. Sure. How about some Truffalo Bill? How about some Biltong with garlic, Darth garlic, and what's the one you like? Nelson Mandela?
Marilyn Monroe?
Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, crab spice.
Yes.
Hot damn. 15% off your order. righteousfelon.com. Use the promo code POD15 at checkout, which is what I will be doing in a few days. You should do the same because it'll get you 15% off your order, and it helps us. It helps you get food. Everyone's happy with this arrangement. POD15 at righteousfelon.com. When we come back in the Pride of Detroit POD cast, could this really be a really bad sign for QB2? We'll talk about that, some re-signings, some departures, and much more next on the POD cast. Hi, chat. Someone got a little mad at
Watch
us
has
on
been
YouTube.
replaced by Hooker Watch.
Hook Watch. Will he get the hook? Anyway, someone in YouTube was mad at us and saying, like, you're not accounting for the cap going up. Yeah, we are. Every GM is.
Oh,
come on.
I sure am. And if people who are Pride of Detroit Direct subscribers, you know what? I'll show you something. I'll show y'all something for free. I'll give you guys a freebie.
$3.99.
This is the Lions 2026 cap. This is what's left of it that hasn't been accounted for yet. Less than 9%.
9%. Wow.
This is what it looks like right now. 44% open this year. And that's not included. I'm sorry. I should recontextualize. This is actually not the amount of cap space that is left. This is the amount of cap space that is not taken up by their top 17 players.
And are you accounting here, again, to the guy's credit, are you accounting here for an estimated salary cap?
I sure am.
Yeah.
The salary cap
because
is
that's
300. Yes.
Like, even though the salary cap went up more than people anticipated, it's not like it went up by like tens of millions more.
It goes up by about 8.5% every year. That is what I'm basing these numbers on.
Yeah. And even it goes up by like a few percentage points more. That's not a like startling extra amount of money that nobody anticipated.
So things, and listen, the thing that I lay out in the article as well that I'm still finishing up is that the Lions have a lot of ways to make cap space next year. But you have to realize that when you make a cap space, especially if you're talking about restructuring contracts, that is not getting rid of cap space. That is moving cap space. So the Lions, like Jared Goff has a ridiculous cap hit next year. They are almost certainly going to convert some of his salary into a signing bonus. They can create up to $40 million in cap space just on that contract alone. But again, you're subtracting 40 from 2025, but you are adding 40 million to 2026, 2027, 28, like spreading it all out there. So you can keep kicking the can down the road, but eventually that's going to catch up to you, right? It happened to the previous regime. It happened to Mayhew, right? That was one of the things that people complained about Mayhew. There are ways to manipulate.
Stafford contract, yeah.
Another way to manipulate the cap is to cut players. And they could do it with Decker. They could do it with Graham. They could do it. But then you have to fill those roles. Then you have to kill it in the draft, or you have to spend free agency money. And if you spend free agency money, like, you aren't saving money by cutting those guys. You're just replacing the player. And so there was an Eagles writer, an Eagles blogger who wrote a really fantastic piece. I'll throw it in the chat right now, talking about why the Eagles are doing what they're doing. My article on Pride of Detroit Direct is kind of copying that in a way and just contextualizing it in Detroit.
To be fair, from talking to some of the Eagles people I have around me in LA, like, I think this was always kind of their plan. They always kind of knew they had a lot of these guys. Like, they just weren't going to be able to hold on to these guys. And like, look, they've got a bunch of top, as been pointed out, a lot of these comp picks means they're going to have like, what, 5 top 100 picks? Like, they've planned this out particularly well. But part of that reality is they have the contract they pay Jalen Hurts. That's always something accounted for. Yeah. And like, yeah, the guys, look at the teams who were spending big too. We're talking about the Commanders. Well, actually, I mean, to that credit, it's not like the Commanders even spent that big. They had like one big splash, I believe, at the start.
They had to trade. They had a trade or two too, right? But I
they
mean,
also
like,
had a
player on a rookie contract.
For
quarterback on a rookie contract.
Quarterback on literally a second-year contract. Caleb Williams, rookie contract there. And they had a ton of cap space with the Bears. And that was one of the least – that was the second cheapest offensive line last year.
Right.
And hey, congratulations, Bears. You paid tremendously for a center who does outside zone and can't pass protect.
I mean, the biggest spenders were the Bears and the Patriots. Why do you think they're the biggest spenders? Probably because they aren't spending any money on their crappy players already, that they already have.
Also, Patriots, once again, rookie contract on a quarterback.
The other point
also, hold on. Those two teams, 2 new head coaches.
Yeah.
Try to turn around as fast as possible. Is that going to be a good move?
Yeah, get a shot in the arm to start.
To me, the Vikings are the most fascinating team.
What about the Commanders? I mean, not just free agency, but like you trade for Debo. So there's like some other things that happened. Like they're interesting.
Here's the thing. Ultimately, and this is like, I know they want to strike while the iron's hot, but like they won 8 games in like the final minute last year.
Commanders
did. Like that what if we talked about this back when the Lions did something similar in 2016? What happens, Jeremy? Regression to the mean. A lot of those 1-score games just start going against you. Like they had a lot of last minute victories. And like that's cool, but that's not a portable skill. And I mean, they're trendy right now because they went to the NFC title game and they're trying to be a splash and it's a big franchise, but I could easily see them finishing with single-digit wins this next year, as much as I could see them winning the NFC East, which has always changed hands.
I think they're making a risky play. I think the Vikings are making a risky play too with all the money that they're spending, because they had to use a lot of their money just to retain the players that they had. And now if you look at their 2026 cap, they are over the cap right now. They have overspent, and
on a rookie quarterback.
On a rookie quarterback. Like that seems hard to do. And listen, there will be opportunities for them to adjust and get under, but it seems like a little bit of like, we're going all in right now. And you might be doing with a quarterback coming off of a major injury who has never started an NFL game, who's never played in an NFL game, he played in what, 1 preseason game?
2 preseason games. Also now has 2 knee surgeries.
Yeah. Or maybe you're doing it with
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers.
I know that's not realistic at this point, and that's just kind of like,
I don't know, man. Like,
no, it sounds like the Vikings aren't. It sounds like Rodgers is waiting for the Vikings, but the Vikings have no interest in him right now.
It's kind of like the Harbaugh situation.
Right. Yeah,
where it's like,
yeah. Right.
Like there's a lot of interest for Aaron Rodgers to be like, man, I'd love to throw to TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, and
Aaron Rodgers
Madison.
Going up to the Vikings saying, I'd love to play for your team. And they're just like, yeah, we know.
Get in line. Yeah.
But the fascinating thing.
I think he's a Steeler.
I think he's going to be a Steeler too. But the fascinating.
Titan, I'm still holding out. Go ahead.
The fascinating thing about, and I want to dig a little bit more into the numbers, but the Vikings have not drafted particularly well.
No.
Under Kawhi.
No.
Like bad.
It feels like the majority of their roster is built through free agency. And that to me feels like a house of cards that is going to come crashing down. Because like you said, they don't have draft capital.
Yeah.
They don't.
Who was their number 1 corner last year? It was Stephon Gilmore.
It was probably Stephon Gilmore. Like
that was a late free agency thing where it's like, oh, Stephon Gilmore is going to Minnesota because they're spending the most money on Stephon Gilmore.
Right. That team is held together by coaching. That's what
they
it feels
brought
like
back Harrison Smith.
Right.
Like Cam Bynum left, right? Like he went elsewhere.
Yes.
I think they brought in Javon Hargrave. That was like their big move.
And Jonathan Allen, right?
Jonathan Allen.
So like
that
was the thing in the NFC North that was really, it was like, oh, okay, everybody's trying to build through the trenches,
right?
Because they saw Detroit win through the trenches. And I guess I think the question I want to ask you guys is, I see Minnesota spending, I see Chicago spending. Those 2 teams, it feels like they're spending because, like, I think that they think the Lions are better than them long term. Like,
Yeah, and the only reason the
let's-
Packers
let-
aren't on
let-
this
Beat
list
them long term.
no,
right,
but
and
who
the Packers
cares?
are on this list because the Packers never spend in free agency. Never, ever fucking spend. in
Who
free
cares?
agency.
Because I mean, the iron's hot right now with Chicago. It's like it's Ben Johnson. Let's go and get a bunch of guys who will maybe help.
also, like,
But like Jonah Jackson, like there's
They
also things
needed
where it's
to,
like,
though.
wow,
They
you're
had
really
no-
throwing a whole lot of faith behind some guys that like
Yeah.
I don't know if that's gonna work out.
But it's also, I think it's also desperate. Like, they cannot get Caleb Williams killed for a second year
no.
for a rookie
Right.
quarterback. Like, they needed
That had to be
spend-
priority number one.
It had to be, and it means in some cases they've probably overspent. They went out, tried to hit the market as fast as they could. You know, to their credit, like Warren and Johnson got polls to actually spend on an offensive line, but like it remains to be seen. As I said, their center is very well paid. He's set up for outside zone runs. He's not a great pass protector. Like, maybe that's part of what Ben Johnson wants to run in Chicago, and maybe they get lucky and they have Ashton Genty fall to them, and suddenly we have to deal with that beast. But like, goal number one is protecting Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
I love Ashton Genty, and I would also love it if the Bears drafted a running back in the first round. Like, it doesn't work for everybody. I'm just saying. And also, that guy took an absolute beating last year.
Monster.
You hear me?
Even with only
not a
playing
lot of
half
tread
games.
left on those tires.
Well, they were trying to
Right.
save him a bit. When you're sitting out like half of a game, when you're Genty, but
I mean,
yeah.
how many touches did he have last year?
I don't know, but like,
Like, a lot.
I've seen Alabama running backs run into the ground worse than him.
Well, also Alabama running backs look like,
What, Derrick
Derrick
Henry?
Henry. Yeah.
Well, Derrick Henry looks like Derrick Henry. They actually look a lot more like Mark Ingram.
Whoa, Mark Ingram had a great career. Trent Richardson, not so great.
That's, you know what? Fair.
Ashton Genty had 374
But I'm sorry, Mark
carries.
Ingram's Heisman is extremely fugazi.
Ashton Genty had 374 carries last year
Was that like feels
in
like
1 year
30
of
a
college
game.
football. Yeah.
That's wild.
23
No, he was
catches.
the entire Boise offense.
I mean, we're talking about 400 touches for Ashton Genty last year.
Wow.
You're getting tackled 400 times.
Well, not if you score every time.
Well, he did have 29 touchdowns. So.
He got a lot of breakout plays. But like that, it's crazy that like that's his number last year, and like if he hadn't been sitting out second halves, we could have probably been talking about like him breaking Barry Sanders' record, which is still crazy that like, yeah, Barry Sanders got run as much as he did back in the day.
Yeah. Dude, Genty's though 5'9", 215. Like, okay, come play in the NFL.
All right, let me get to some alerts here, and then we can continue discussion in whatever direction you want. I think maybe even I want to talk a little bigger staff here, but
Real quick though, like I'm sorry, because once again, this is me and my people yelling at us from YouTube. Like I know that the Vikings are always in consideration and
Are they
talk,
though?
but
Are they though?
it's like, okay, cool, they're in the playoffs, but like there's been some years where it's like, cool, they're in the playoffs and they ain't gonna do jack shit.
I think we all knew, what was that, 2022
Yeah.
was, as Chris
Oh.
likes to say, fugazi. Like they get bouncing, like, because the whole
They
idea
lost
of
to
going in-
Daniel Jones.
the whole idea that everyone keeps saying with the Lions is like they need to go all in. They need to they need to break through, right? They need the thing that'll get them to the championship. They're already in the spot where the Vikings are, where they're in contention or in conversation, right? Like the whole idea was free agency is supposed to be the thing that pushes you over the top. Well,
I
Vikings
just
haven't been
feel
in the
like
Super
if this
Bowl in what? How many years?
all the Lions had to do was win one game. I just genuinely do not feel like people are this impatient or upset or feel like it's built on this kind of like sand. Like
part-
They
part of it,
needed to
too, is
win
just-
one half. They needed to win one half of football.
What they really needed was Aiden Hutchinson to be healthy, because then people would remember that this team
or
does
half
have
the
a
rest of
pass
this
rush.
team, or Ali McNeil to be healthy, or literally anyone else on that defense to be healthy.
I think
You got
Amik
screwed
Robertson
last
did
year.
not break his arm at the beginning of the game.
the second
Carlton
play.
Davis not to break his jaw.
But I mean, but everyone is hyper focused on the pass rush and not having Aiden Hutchinson or Davenport or Barnes for 15 games out of the season has made people
It
forget
makes a
that those
difference.
guys were doing some things.
Losing
Yeah.
a Lee McNeil hurts too. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I mean, Jeremy, that's my big point is like the Browns. Who's playing opposite of Myles Garrett? The Raiders. Who's playing opposite of
Well, it
Max
was
Crosby?
Zadarius
Like,
Smith.
well, it was, but it's not anymore. But like, okay, is everybody screaming at the Browns to get another pass rusher? No, they're screaming at him to get a
probably.
quarterback. No, they're screaming at him to get a quarterback.
Okay. Well, yeah, Cleveland. Yeah, that's
For the Raiders, I mean, are they screaming to get another pass rusher opposite of Max Crosby? No, they're probably worried about like, do we have a wide receiver for Geno Smith to
Do
throw
we
the
have an
ball to?
offensive line? They
Yes.
also have a terrible offensive line.
That's what I mean, though, is like, I think Lions fans forget that Aiden Hutchinson was one of those guys. Like,
Right.
he is a Max Crosby. He is a Myles
Well,
Garrett. He is a player
you
of
reference
that
that Mike.
caliber.
You reference that Mike Clay thing where
Yes.
he ranks the roster. He has
I
what the
was
defensive
just about to
line
bring
like
that
an
up.
8 or 9 out of 10.
It's too high.
It is too high, but like
it's too high. But
I
also,
do think people need to have a reminder
Yes.
that not a lot of people have a top tier edge and a top tier defensive tackle, and I would say a pretty high tier nose tackle.
who has three dudes on the defensive line? Find me the teams in the NFL who have three certifiable dudes on on the defensive line.
Right.
Like, who are those teams?
Now
Like,
I understand.
you
I
even
understand
look at
DJ
like
Reader.
Kansas City.
DJ Reader's played his best football. I understand Aleem's likely to miss some time early in the season. But when you get to December, you hope those guys are all balling. You hope maybe Marcus Davenport works out. If he doesn't, hopefully there's a rookie that can step in. Hopefully Makai Wingo takes a year 2 jump. Hopefully, I mean, we don't even mention Josh Pascal like he's already off the team.
Matzik says the Eagles last year. Yeah, sure. And again, we just talked about like a lot
Yeah,
of those
they
guys
won the
just
Super
left.
Bowl.
And they won the Super Bowl. Yeah.
And they
some of those
lost half
guys, but again, some of those guys, they had to get lucky that those guys hit their hottest seasons at just the right time
Sure.
too.
Yeah,
Like,
how many
that's-
y'all had heard
that's
of
what
Milton
NFL is.
Williams
Yeah.
before last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like, so we have Giants and Eagles. That's what's in the chat.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, guys. Like, if Marcus
what's-
Davenport can play 12 games this year, it's going to be a win.
And the Giants, and we just brushed over this, but like, you know, much like with the Browns and Raiders, cool, the Giants have those, but what do the Giants not have, Ryan?
Anything else?
A quarterback.
Among other things they're missing, yes. But yes, especially a quarterback.
Nick the Greek, how dare you? Jordan dies on slander will not be tolerated here.
Oh man.
All right, you wanted to get to JB Bickerstaff. I'm
Oh
curious.
no, I want to get
about
to
this.
alerts first.
Oh, okay. We also had a listcast request, and I think it speaks to you guys. I did see what T Skog sent us.
All right. Chris 1999 29 whatever. Chris and a bunch of numbers, thank you for the follow. Damit, thank you for the follow. Captain James Kirk 10 bits says hopefully this is better than the mid All right, the mid-week mailbag.
No, whoa, what happened there?
Yeah, this is all in an effort for me to change the name of the midweek mailbag that Eric has been pushing for years, and now it's being called the mid, as in like how the kids use mid. And week is being spelled WEAK, so now it's the midweek mailbag.
Oh, dude, I love
That's
that.
that's
I'm a
too close
big
to
fan of
that's
that.
too close to a segment we already do on Fox Sports Radio called Midweek or Major.
Let's get that. Let's get that in the chat.
No,
I'll get it started there.
absolutely not.
Hashtag midweek.
Wow. Don't become sheep, chat. Don't do it. It's just these two. Don't do it. Don't let them.
Stand up to the dictator. There we go. All
That's right.
There we go.
That's right.
Yes. Let's see it.
Weak.
I just needed for the lag to get through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go through the alerts.
Children, a bunch of you. Jer42 Jer, thank you for the 20 months. Subscribe to the channel. The Pintar 20 months subscribe, says 20 blessed months as an enlionsed fan. Long live POD. The Sunrisemans in the Midway. The Sunrisemans in the Midwest. Okay. Allow it. $2 super chat from Rise Beast says, I just finished the midweek mailbag like 10 minutes ago. Hey, all the Lions content all at once. Chat, you were I'm about to turn the chat off so you don't see it on the screen.
Chat, I'm so proud of you.
LJ, thank you for the 59 months, says off-season fun. Toast, thank you for the 14 months, says the off-season was automatically a success when they re-signed Craig Reynolds. Okay. I don't think Craig Reynolds is on our rundown today, but...
Well, it's a needle mover. All right.
Nick the Greek, 107-bit, says, I'm trying to come up with an infographic that compares sacks per game between Lions players, but can't think of how it should be formatted. I've seen some of your charts. I don't want to see any more of your charts, Nick the Greek.
Yeah, please don't.
Subron, they give the 4 months. It says, I'm just here so you don't get fined.
We would get fined?
We would get fined, Subron? And then Nick the Greek 10-bit says, Josh Pascal is Jordan Dizon 12 years later. All right, chat, you're on timeout. I'm taking you away from the screen.
No.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Dictator.
You're in timeout.
Gotta cut.
You're in timeout until I see all of the chats and I can't see any hashtag midweeks.
Oh my God.
They have to clear my screen.
You know what I call that, Jeremy?
What's that?
Weak.
Great.
Straight weak.
Great.
You know
Sorry.
it's been mid?
What's that?
Severance.
Ooh, you didn't like the new one either?
It was okay. I mean, like, it was at least like, it was better than the last episode, but that's not a high bar to clear.
Is this once again like me dragging my feet on a TV series?
Yeah.
And I'm completely missing like the fallout as people eventually hit the. This is just like I'm not going to call it Game of Thrones because that was an epic. That was a collapse that I don't know.
That was
longer. A huge collapse.
That was like saying, 7 seasons deep.
I know, but like I had never felt better than not watching a 7-season TV show after I watched people fall out with Game of Thrones.
This is only season 2 of Severance, though.
I know, and I've heard the first season's tremendous.
Yeah. Season 2 has been like great up until the past 2 episodes.
Here's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of buddies who I was watching Ted Lasso with. And
speaking of another show that's heading for the gutter,
there was a Christmas episode that was beyond hokey, and that show can be hokey at times, and it ruined the show for them. They stopped watching because it tainted the way they viewed the rest of the show. And there's a little bit of that with Severance too, with episode 7, and I'm just like, that was brutal. And now I feel like I can see all the faults of the show a little bit.
That's
and then the other aspect, and this is almost Severance's fault because I listened to the Severance podcast because I like Ben Stiller and Adam Scott and they're funny, but they kept talking about Lost and comparing it to Lost, and I'm like,
oh, that's not where you want to be, buddy.
That's not the show you want to compare yourself to because they didn't stick the landing. Because when you have a show like this that surrounds like a big question, when you answer that question,
yes,
that's when you lose a lot of people, right? Like
you lose the mystique of the question. Right. All these people love coming up with their own answers, and when you finally present them with an actual answer, it's never as good as what people are theorizing.
Right. And that is what I'm afraid of.
And that's the reel that I sent you, Jeremy. I don't know if you watched it.
I forgot to respond to you, but yes, I did. It was great.
It was this woman who was pretending that she was like the lead writer on Severance, and she was like, "Oh my God, I put all my ideas into one show, and I have a audience who's just neurodivergent enough to like pay attention to everything." Like,
why did I put goats in there?
Why did I put goats? How do I end this thing? Like,
this is why I was so glad that I watched the first season. Back in the day, I watched the first season of Westworld and said, that's enough.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
That's enough. Yes. I don't need to watch more.
Severance did need more, though. Like,
I get that.
Like,
yeah.
I get what you mean, though, Chris. Like, there are some, like, True Detective season 1. I know it was like a whole different thing season 2, but it's like True Detective season 1 I'll put up against any other season of television ever. Mm-hmm. And it's like you capture lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
And then like season 2 there's so much to live up to.
Right. And there's a couple things that play there. Like one is that I feel whether the writers will ever admit it or not, the fan reaction impacts how season 2 is written of any TV show that gets popular.
I was gonna say that's something I constantly worry about too, is when you do catch this lightning, like, 'cause this is where Game of Thrones started to fall apart too, where it's like it's almost so beholden to the fan community at that point, and like it you know what I'm saying? Like it's suffering from its own success,
right,
at a certain point.
I will say this about Severance, though. It remains a beautiful show.
Yes.
It remains, I think, relatively well written. It's acted
and it's shot very beautifully. Yeah.
And like, I mean, the guy who plays Mr. Millicek is just knocking it out of the park week after week.
No, I'm
going
gonna
to
watch it. I'm gonna watch it eventually. It's just yeah.
And
his Audi signed an NFL contract.
That's right. But like now, I'm definitely like, it was a little bit corny, but at the same time, it was a very satisfying delivery of devour feculence. Like, just I'm going to say that all the time because it's hilarious. Oh man! By the way, I was about to bring chat back on, but then Michigan ruined it with another hashtag midweek. So
put it back
you guys
on.
Are still on
they
timeout.
want to talk about Severance.
Nope. Y'all can devour feculence until I don't see any midweeks.
I'm actually behind now. I was told about episode 2 of Celtic City, Ryan, and I think from a former NFL player too, like that I talked to, who like I think he's starting to he thinks episode 2 was a much better improvement over episode 1. So
okay,
I'm it seems like this one's a lot more of the of kind of the good stuff I really wanted on the Bill Russell saga. So it's definitely a lot more historical than I thought it was going to be. Like, one person's like, I thought they'd blow past all this and go straight to the modern era. I'm like, no, but I didn't think they'd spend this much time on the 60s either.
I mean, but it's like, it's arguably like the most important part of the Celtics mystique, though. You know what I mean? Like, that's where all the championships in a row happen, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I think we just valorize the 80s, 90s so much that people are like, where's Bird? Let's get to Bird and Parrish. But like, you're right, the 60s, it is like the first team that's like an all-black starting roster at one point. You know, Kuzi and Russell. Like, I mean, I had both my grandfather on my dad's side played basketball in college, and my grandmother would play basketball on my mother's side played basketball her entire life, and they both, because of the 60s, were massive Celtics fans, because like that was the winning team. And for both sides of my family, who were, you know, my grandmother, who was Catholic, and my grandfather, who grew up in Rhode Island, like, you know, Bob Cousy's the fucking icon.
Yeah. But also amongst the kids these days, it's like Bob Cousy played against plumbers and taxi drivers.
Yeah, that's which is ridiculous when you start to like watch the clips. It's like, yeah, it's like Bill Russell's right here, and they're like in heated playoff series against Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah.
Just like, come on.
Yeah.
Fucking that's your coach of the LA Lakers, by the way.
Sorry, I was jumping in chat because YouTube's still having a debate on free agency versus building a team free agency versus
I might have the
draft and R2 kind of beat me to what I was going to say. Like, the idea that the Lions are only building through the draft is not true.
Patently false.
Right. As R2 says, DJ Reader, David Montgomery, Alex Anzalone, Tim Patrick, Zadarius Smith, Kevin Zeitler, Graham Glasgow, Carlton Davis, Amik Robertson, Cam Sutton, TJ Gardner-Johnson, Craig Reynolds, just off the top of my head, free agent signings.
DJ Reed,
right? Yeah. So like, the idea isn't that you shouldn't spend anything in free agency. It's selective, you know, careful spending, and in general, short-term things. Like I said on one of the other podcasts, this was only the third time that Brad Holmes has dealt a 3-year deal to an external free agent, and the other two came in one off season. Can you name them?
Cam Sutton.
Correct.
Did we finish alerts, by the way?
Marcus Davenport?
Nope. No to both of you. Dave Montgomery.
Mm. Oh, multi-year contract.
No, 3. He got a 3-year as well.
Yeah, no, but that's what
Yes.
that's what you're okay. Yeah.
Yeah, 3
Yeah.
years.
I forgot Marcus
Yep.
Davenport was just 1 year, but technically now Marcus Davenport does count because that counts as 2 years.
That doesn't count.
It counts now. So add it to the lore.
Nick the Greek with another 100 bits says, NFC North rivals, serious question. Do you think Kwesi's draft record is objectively terrible? Has it improved at all? How are they sustaining a winning product, and how long until it crashes? I mean, we were just kind of talking about that, right?
I mean, Jeremy just said it. Like, it seems a lot of
It's
it's just
bad.
Kevin O'Connell propping that shit up.
Yeah. You know, I'm not going to say that the only way to have success in this league is you have to draft well for multiple years, but
It makes things really fucking easy.
it makes it easier. I think what the Vikings are doing right now is very much an anomaly, and I would argue that they haven't had any true success under Kwesi yet. Now, I mean, we have to be honest with ourselves too. Like, last year was great for them. They managed,
Fantastic.
but how often are you taking a scrap heap quarterback and turning him into a top 10 player like that?
Jeremy, did you break chat? I haven't seen it pop up at all since you moved back.
I think it's because I erased chat. Oh, you're not
Stop
even seeing
erasing
it
it.
appearing on the screen
No,
or
it's
on
completely
in the
blank.
chat?
It's completely blank now on stream.
Oh yeah, I turned it. Well, are you talking about like the box to my right, or are you talking about
Yes,
the
yes.
live chat?
I'm
populating?
talking about the box to your right.
Yeah,
Oh, that's been empty.
I was
Ever
waiting for
since
someone.
he became a dictator. Yeah.
Okay, there isn't any more midweek hashtags in my view. So
Oh my god, man.
you've become back. You've earned your privileges back. But well, all right.
Don't do
Ryan
that.
just
No,
ruined for everybody.
we have so much goddamn empty space on the screen.
Ryan just ruined it for everybody. All right.
Get it cut.
You've made your
Get it
decision.
cut.
You've made your decision, chat.
Yeah. I want to
Anyone
see it.
watching without a chat on just looks like, oh, you've got no audience what to speak of whatsoever.
That's fine. I don't care. Look at the view count. It's fine.
I'm very proud of chat.
Anyway,
Bickerstaff,
like it.
I got some takes and some questions.
All right, I'm
Sure.
gonna go get a piece of candy real quick, but
Oh,
I want to
so
hear this. No, I want to hear this. I want to hear
Okay.
these takes.
Ooh, piece of candy.
Okay. Ooh, piece of candy. Now what do I do?
All right,
Now what do
so-
I do? I have nothing I talk about.
Before I get into it, I do need to admit two things.
Mhm.
I've only seen the clip at the end of the second half, or end of the first half. I mean, second quarter.
Sure.
Where, or maybe it's the third quarter, whatever, where he's flipping out, where Cade gets teched up twice.
Yeah.
I did not see how the game was officiated for the rest of the game. I did not see. I don't watch the Pistons regularly, so I don't know if they've been unfairly officiated all year. I know people have lamented that they don't get enough free throws. But I saw the clip at the end of the half. I saw obviously his very short press conference where he answered one question and walked off. So that's where my knowledge base is at. I admit I am coming from a bit of a, I wouldn't say ignorant spot, but certainly less informed than maybe more Pistons fans. But I would argue I'm also maybe a little bit more impartial because I'm not emotionally invested in the Pistons.
Well, I think you are missing. There is one part in that there is a structural problem with officiating right now in that certain stars get, I mean, this has kind of always been the way, really, is certain stars get certain calls more than others. In this particular case, you do have to also reckon with the fact that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is not just a star that gets a lot of calls. I would say part of his play is predicated upon getting those ticky-tack calls. In the same way that, like,
Sure.
you could say James Harden's game was predicated upon getting those calls, where, like, he's clearly just throwing himself at you to make sure that he can get an and one. Like, you know what I'm talking about, Ryan? Like, part of that is like how the game was officiated in specific things, in the technicals, in the hostile act that they called for about with Isaiah Stewart and Caleb Williams. I mean, I'm sorry, not Caleb. Jesus Christ, where my head's going. But yeah, no, like Isaiah, like what they did with Isaiah Stewart. But like part of this is also that the way guys like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander play the game, they're fishing for those calls 24/7. That's like, and that informs how they play basketball, how they go on offense, how they attack the rim, because that was James Harden who would shoot a 3-point, and as he's doing it, he's flailing his arms out like he had just gotten shot. And SGA is as good as a player as he is. He's absolutely one of those. And that goes into the officiating. And it's frustrating when you're playing against it.
Okay.
What are the takes?
My take is
no, he's trying to figure out like yeah, you explain.
So first of all, I want to say, in general, post-game press conference, awesome.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Great. Love it.
I love defending your players like that. I love taking on what I assume to be will be a significant fine. I'm not one of these people like, oh, I mean, Dan Campbell takes a different approach when something like that happens, right? Like and I think both approaches work, right? That like he'll say, it's on me. I still got to do better. We can't blame the refs. We can't put ourselves in that position to whatever, blah, 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 blah. That's still defending your players. That's still, I mean, and like, if you want to compare this to Dan Campbell after the Cowboys game, Dan Campbell couldn't really hold it together after the Cowboys game either.
Dave.
Like, he had his breaking point. Yeah. Now, this
and
is
I think
where
there is a particular thing. Like, I like that you brought up the Dan Campbell thing, because I feel like Bickerstaff compared, like, is the turnaround coach where it's like, yeah, these guys are going to compete really hard. And that's what makes them endearing right now, is that the Pistons are fighting, like, in a league where a lot of teams aren't fighting very hard in the regular season. They're fighting tooth and claw for everything.
Right.
And Bickerstaff reflects that right now.
Now, the part where I'm probably coming from more of an ignorant take is he came onto the court during that whole fiasco last night, and he had an opportunity to pull Kate away, and he didn't. And like, he's also like feeding into the crowd a little bit and like trying to get them, and it's like, I feel like you could have been a better coach for your team at that moment.
JB Bickerstaff is a really interesting case study, and it didn't work in Cleveland. They're very clearly happy that he's not the coach anymore in Cleveland. Like multiple players have made comments about like, oh, like what's the difference between last year's team and this year's team? Because on paper, there's not really a lot that's changed except for the head coach. And they keep coming back to, oh, we got a new coaching staff in here and X, Y, and Z kind of thing. I also found that to be peculiar, Jeremy, that like you don't have your head coach stepping, but at the same token, are you giving your star player that room to like be themselves, right? Like that you're not going to get in the way of them because you don't want to step on their toes?
Yeah.
I'm just asking the question. I don't know if it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but I'm just saying, like, is that the move there because you have a young guy who's like growing into himself, and you're like, yeah, you're gonna stick up for yourself, kind of thing.
Right. I do get that. Maybe I've been around Dan Campbell too much, but it feels like you have to set the example of staying calm as much as possible in that moment.
Where do those moments happen in NFL games, though? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that those moments in NFL games happen in the same way that they do in NBA games. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic, I think.
How so? Like, when bad officiating is bad officiating.
It is, but it feels like in the NFL there's just so many moving parts, and it feels like officiating in the NBA, Chris. I think you're gonna understand this too, but like it's more micro, right? And I think the biggest complaint that Pistons fans have had has been Cade doesn't get the same whistle that these guys like SGA and Anthony Edwards and these other like superstar players get. Like they get this certain whistle that that doesn't happen in the same way in the NFL. Like, I think the
No.
close comparison, and it's funny because DJ Reed had to go up against Justin Jefferson a bunch in that London game.
Mhm.
Um, but like, you don't really get like that superstar whistle unless you're a quarterback in the NFL.
No, and to illustrate what I was saying about SGA, and to this point too, 10 free throws last night. Everyone talked about his 48 points, 10 of those coming on free throws. And a lot of that is, again, just how he plays, knowing he will get that whistle.
10 free
Like
throws
that,
isn't a lot, like,
no,
if we're being honest.
but like
But
nobody
yeah,
else had more than four free throws in the game.
that's fair. I,
Like,
I, I don't know if I want to, like, there was a senior in my class the other day who wanted to call SGA a free throw merchant. And I'm like, we're not
no,
there.
I'm not calling him
We're
that,
not
but
there.
I am saying that he is playing for the whistle.
He's getting the benefit of the whistle,
Yeah.
whereas I think Bickerstaff's frustration is like we're not getting the benefit of the
And
whistle.
I just,
Like his whole thing was we're playing basketball the right way. Yes, we are aggressive. Yes, we play defense a little bit handsy, but at the same time, like we have young players and we're developing players and like we're doing things the right way, and everybody else is just like it's a star league outside of us.
I think it's something Jeremy said too about pulling your player back. It's not the same as the NFL in that regard too, because I feel like coaches slash managers in each sport, there's a different expectations on what you stand up for when dealing with officials. And so on one side we've got NFL coaches who are, to be the rock.
Some
On
of them.
on the other end of the spectrum, we got the baseball manager who the first time you get hosed, you go out there and scream bloody hell until you get thrown out of the stadium.
True.
Yeah,
I
technical
think
fouls are like an interesting thing that happens. I agree, Chris. Like I feel like NBA coaches are more aligned to like MLB managers.
not as far as like, at the drop of a hat you get thrown out of the game, but I think I think yes, in the DNA of things they are a little bit slanted more towards the MLB side than the NFL side.
You can immediately be reprimanded in a way that harms your team,
Yeah.
quote unquote, more so in the NBA because it's like, oh, Tech, that's a free throw,
Yeah.
and if you do it again, you're out of here, right? Whereas in the NFL, do you get a sideline warning? How many unsportsmanlike conduct penalties get thrown on coaches?
And
Yes,
there is a
ask Matt
lot
LaFleur.
to the
Yeah,
egos.
that's what I was gonna
and
say.
I was gonna say, there is also something absolutely to the egos of basketball officials at this point, where like
That's the sense I
there's
got
been
from
some
watching
guys
the
who
clip is
look
like, well, come on,
yeah.
like stop being so sensitive.
And again, it's not baseball umpires who, if you look at them funny, they'll throw you out of the game. But like
Robots are going to change that
Yeah.
this year, Chris.
I will
I
miss
mean,
that part. I will
Rashid
really-
just looked at a guy and got teched
well,
up.
Sheed was Sheed too. There's only one Sheed.
One of one.
I guess my hope is that in the playoffs, if there was a similar situation, since the stakes are way higher,
Yeah.
that not only Bickerstaff but like his teammates would pull Cade away there. Getting double tech there is ridiculous, and again,
Yeah.
like part of the blame there goes on the officiating. But once you get teched up
I think
once, you got to walk away. You got
Agreed. There is part of me too that like from a like if you think about it from a big picture standpoint, we talk about like the problems that the NBA is dealing with right now in terms of how people view the product. And it's like if I'm a parent and I take my family of 4 down to the Pistons game, that's a $300 night. Tickets, parking, food, concession. It's 300 base level. You just threw Cade Cunningham out of the game because you're ego tripping as a referee. Like that's not the product that I want to go see. You know what I mean? Like that's just not I don't know. That's not
what?
great. But you know what?
You should be able to swear at refs.
Normalize it.
Yeah, and you want to talk about the other? I mean, if we're going to want to tie this into more problems about the NBA and like keep the Pistons in the front of this too, like I know people love inside the NBA, but could you imagine anyone on the set of NFL on Fox, Good Morning Football, Monday Night Countdown, what other Sunday Night Football, anyone out there saying, Yeah, I don't know the name of the Minnesota Vikings head coach.
That right? That's wild. Like
Like, and
The
that's
Shaq
not like
thing is nuts.
like I as I said to someone
Gronkwood.
from Awful Announcing, why is this the only league and the only sport where being ignorant of teams is considered like cool and edgy?
I don't think it is. I don't think anyone liked
But it
that
is.
comment from
That's why
Shaq.
people tune in because they want to listen to Shaq and Chuck shit on teams all the time.
I don't think that's true.
I
I don't think
wonder-
that's
there is
the
a
appeal of
contingent-
either of those guys.
It is for Shaq. All Shaq does is go up there and get in beefs with people and act like an idiot.
But that comment he made was universally panned. Universally panned.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
because
he got dunked on by like the Pistons like social media accounts.
no, it got panned because it came at this moment where I think finally inside the NBA is getting some scrutiny, but he's definitely done it in years past, and he doesn't get that scrutiny.
It's wild though because it comes on the heels of Charles Barkley making a great point where it's like you guys just want to talk about the Lakers. Like, can we
Yes.
talk about Oklahoma City? Can we talk about Cleveland? Can we talk about these other teams that are having incredible seasons?
No, it's
but
all
they're
that
Focused on an
mid-market teams?
NFL level? You don't think that happens on an NFL level?
Not to
Talking
the
about
degree that we're
Cowboys,
talking about with the NBA. No. So the Cowboys, the outlier. You can always get numbers and ratings on the Cowboys, but like
Chris's point is different though because I think Chris's point is like we're gonna like talk about something like we know, but we don't know, and we don't care that we don't know.
and we'll tell the audience that we don't know rather than just hiding
But
behind
that
some
doesn't
producers
happen a
hiding
lot.
us.
Where they are admitting ignorance.
No, I think NFL people would rather double down.
Right. Yes.
No, but like,
but that's the thing.
If
There
a
are
team
plenty
is
of
Is that
uninformed.
worse? Yeah.
There are
but
plenty of
this is-
uninformed takes out there. Skip
But if a
Bayless is talking
team-
about things all the time in the
Oh.
NFL.
But if a team is a story in the NFL, it will get talked about. If you are interesting enough,
Right, because
you
they're
will get talked about.
because they're much bigger than the NBA.
Sure, and but like this is again to Ryan's point, a structural problem of the NBA that they've spent so long hyping up only like the logic of national coverage in the NBA is five top TV markets, five major stars who are the sell the most jerseys. Everyone else, get the fuck out. We're not spending a single fucking minute on you. That would never fly with the NFL. And I don't even think it flies with baseball. Like, if there is a big enough story, they will talk about it on the MLB network. But like this idea that like the minute you start talking about the Cavaliers, your ratings will drop to zero is a real fear in NBA circles, and it has led to environments that allows Shaq to go up in there and say, "I don't watch the Pistons, and I don't know who their coach is."
Two things to that. One, I agree, Chris.
And it's not like the Pistons are fucking Sacramento either, Ryan. They're like one of the most exciting
the
teams.
hottest team in
It's
football.
once again
basketball.
it's a hot team
Yeah.
that was terrible for so long, turning around, has a great young star, and that's still not enough to pass the mustard.
I mean, plus, I mean, they were relevant in the '80s and
Yes,
the 2000s.
they have three rings.
And
They have three rings in their history.
100%. Like, I think one, to the credit of the NFL, like if there's a story going on Sunday morning before the games, they're sending somebody to go talk to the head coach of the team of
Right.
where the story's happening. In the NBA, like there isn't it doesn't feel like there's time for that to happen and percolate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just
Well,
because
it's
of the
local coverage, local broadcasts, right?
and yes, and plus it's like this weekly ecosystem that we live in the NFL. Whereas
Right.
like in the NBA, like these things like it takes a while. It takes a couple
Sure.
weeks for the Cavaliers to go on a 15-game winning streak, but still at the end of that, we don't have like somebody going and doing a
Weekly
you know
recap show.
Yeah.
a person piece
When-
on what's going on in Cleveland when it
When
comes
we
to
don't-
basketball.
When we don't cover a team in the NFL, it's because it is legitimately they are boring right now. What the people were asking me is like, well, what about all the years the Lions didn't coverage? Yeah, the Lions weren't doing anything that warranted a story for them to be on a national level. But like, you can still be a bad team in the NFL, and people like if it's a good enough mess, we'll talk about the Jaguars. We'll talk about Cleveland. Like, but
And talk about the Cowboys and like I
Yeah.
think Mina Kimes has talked about that. Like we are going to talk about the Cowboys. Like that drives ratings.
Yeah,
like
that's
we are
the one
going to
team that will
talk
keep
about them.
driving ratings. Like
Yeah.
no matter what their record is, you talk Cowboys, but that's the only team. Whereas it feels like it's the opposite problem in the NBA. It's like if you get outside these certain teams and these certain players, your fear is nobody will listen to you.
Right. You get outside of the Lakers and it's like, why are we talking about the Houston Rockets?
Yeah.
I think part of
Right.
that too is it's a superstar league, right? Like there are only a certain amount of people that people recognize.
It's an 8, but the problem is they're not. You have to at least at some point, and Brian should know this from pro wrestling. At some point, you have to start putting over young superstars, or else when those older superstars go away,
You just
you
have
ain't
the
gonna
GOAT
have
conversation
shit.
a billion
You're gonna
times over
keep
and over
you're gonna
again.
keep like hanging your entire hat on talking about Steph Curry and LeBron James. You need some young blood to put over at some point.
So then my question is like, if there needs to be a face of the NBA, does there need to be a face of the NFL? Because I feel like there doesn't need to be a face of the NFL.
No,
Like
there's multiple
agree.
faces of the
the
NFL.
NFL doesn't need a face.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like they have logos.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like they have teams.
Yeah.
The NBA is 100% superstar driven.
Right.
So
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say on it, because I can see chat's
Yeah,
getting
I know.
tired of this conversation.
well, I tried to
Um,
tie it into NFL.
I think what just bothers me about the Shaq conversation is that people are acting like he's the first analyst in any sport to get by on charisma rather than talent. That has been a problem in sports media for the past 20 years.
Terry Bradshaw.
So I think again,
Yes.
I think it was a lightning rod for a lot of things. It wasn't just that. I agree with you.
Rob
generally on that point,
Gronkowski.
but I feel like the point he was making more like the reason why this blew up more than anything was like it's the disparity of here's a story the NBA should absolutely be selling.
Yeah.
And it's coming at it at a year where how the NBA is covered is absolutely under the microscope. People shitting on the product has been like really under the microscope, especially if you read like Awful Announcing or those guys.
Sure.
And a lot of the people who've been complaining about people shitting on the NBA have been guys on inside the NBA who have, and I mean like it is right that they should critique the product, but it has seemed over to some of the people in the league that is like the epicenter of crapping on the game. And again, some of that is right. Some of that is lazy. This all became a lightning rod. And again, at the end of the day, you look at the guys on that show, Chuck, Kenny, at the very least, well, at least bring something strong, at least pretend they want to be on TV. Shaq just doesn't seem to give a fuck. And this was the most of Shaq not giving a fuck.
Yeah. I mean,
and again, on a story that you should absolutely be pushing if you are a sports league.
Yep. Fair.
Yeah.
But it produced content. I'm sure that clip from that podcast did great, and Pistons.
And we're talking about it right now.
We're talking about it, and no one wants us to talk about it anymore. So I think we're done.
Yeah.
Thank you, for Lions Force, for the 52 months. As let's go, Lions keeping me sane in this dead zone before the draft. Hey, the Red Wings won.
Ryan,
It's not too late at all.
I know it's early for the bracket. Real quick though, before we go back to football talk, squeeze one more ring out of this basketball rag here.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the bracket or anyone you like right now?
So they're all my teams that I have money
Oh
on.
wow, Duke, Arizona, Michigan.
Speakers.
You've just wasted your money on Arizona. Never bet on Arizona.
I like the ones that have a wager of 0. Those are my
Yeah,
favorite kind of bets.
those are the free bets.
Free bets. Okay.
I'd bet with those.
I mean, like, you have how many teams there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Yeah.
8. I have 9 teams.
I'll
Like
be honest.
9 of 64.
I'm a little concerned with how many free bets you have.
Well,
They don't give free bets to winners.
that's not true. They give free bets to people who deposit money. So,
And if you're depositing money, what does that mean about the account before you deposited the money?
You're not withdrawing money from it.
oh no, I can withdraw money, and I withdrew money
Can.
today. I withdrew
I
money
didn't see
today.
North Carolina on there, but
I know you
I
didn't see North
Michigan
Carolina.
either. That was weird.
You didn't see North Carolina on there, but you
North
did see
Carolina.
that.
Oh.
Mm.
You bet on the Red Wings?
Yeah. The money was just, it made sense today. So,
That's why you didn't tell me to watch.
well, got to bring him back somehow.
Yeah.
All right. We ready to get back into it?
Yeah.
MJ
no,
Kimball,
hold on, sorry,
gamblers
one-
are
no.
people too. Yes.
Hold on. Sorry. One last thing. I'm sorry. One last thing. Fuck Duke. All right. Now we can.
Aw, really?
Not because you bet on them, but just because fuck Duke. That's my lifestyle. Is fuck
What?
Duke.
Oh, okay. So we can't be fans of Cooper Flag?
No.
Okay.
No. I only have room for 2 Dukies in my life: Grant Hill and Elton Brand. There's no more room. No more room in the club.
There's no room for Corey Maggette.
No room. No room. Fuck Duke.
Shane Battier?
I spent 2 years. I went 2 years at Wake Forest. I was born in Greensboro. Let me tell you, man, the Duke hate is deep in my heart.
Lakin Tomlinson?
No. Where'd he
Not
sign?
making good, not helping the case.
He signed somewhere.
He did.
He did. He's still
still
getting
around.
money. He's still getting money in 2025. Good on Lakin.
He like went somewhere consequential, I thought.
No.
He
It was
went
didn't he
to the
sign with the
Seahawks.
not consequential then.
I went from loving to where the Seahawks were going to hating where the Seahawks were going
What?
in a matter
Okay.
of like 48 hours.
What are they? I just want to know what their plan is, because it's like, okay. First off, let me just preface this to get a little bit of Lions talking here, because I was arguing with some people on Tiki Bar about them wanting Cooper Flag, and I just kept asking them why. And we're gonna get into Tim Patrick, and I think that's the much better answer than
Oh, you
washed
mean-
ass
oh,
Cooper Flag.
You
Or
said Cooper
Cup.
Flag, and
Yeah,
I was
sorry.
like,
Yeah, I'm like,
Cooper Cup.
who
Cooper
is
Cup. Cooper Cup. Sorry, Cooper
Yeah.
Cup. Cooper Cup.
yes, yeah, yep. Sorry, wrong white guy.
Cooper plus mundane object really fucking me up here. I had all the intention in the world. I'm like, all right, you're getting rid of Geno. I don't love the Sam Darnold signing, but like, cool at least. Maybe have him for a year or two when you'll eventually turn around the offensive line. But then you go and spend how much money did they give Cooper Cup?
$15 million a year.
Yeah, 45 over 3. By the way, Lakin Tomlinson's Wikipedia has not been updated. He went to the Texans, not the Seahawks.
Texans, not the Seahawks. Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's not bad.
Hashtag
But,
protect
like,
Stroud.
Okay,
By the way, I like that
It has now
Will
been-
Hernandez's Wikipedia has already been updated to go to the Lions, and no one has touched Lakin Tomlinson's Wikipedia a week after he's already signed.
So we are now what 3 seasons going on 4 removed from his All Pro Bowl NFL Offensive Player of the Year performance, and he has not had anything close to 2021 since that time.
Who's that?
Cooper.
Cup.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was a Triple Crown wide receiver. It was
Yeah,
cool.
we totally get that.
Yeah.
We're going on 4
Who's
years
quarterback?
of that in the rear view, and a lot of injuries in between then and now. So that much money to the Seahawks, and again, where it's like you have no offensive line. I don't know what you plan to. You lost 2 great receivers. This is what you replaced with. I don't know what they're doing, Ryan. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what the Seahawks clearly want to be stuck in that like 7-10, 8-9 territory.
They were in such a good spot until they did the other things.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like they
I mean, let's just say it. Geno Smith trade still makes no sense. It's putting your team in a significant setback when they didn't have to.
It makes sense if you don't then go and sign Sam Darnold.
And Cooper Kupp.
at least you can rationalize it, Chris.
Yeah,
Like
that you're going to tank. You're going to be bad for a year. You're going to stockpile some picks, get better on the offensive line.
which is like the opposite of what the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing right now. Like they're going to like make a trade for DK Metcalf and then like put in some quarterback that'll get them 9 wins or 10 wins, and they're stuck in mediocrity and they can't be bad enough to get a quarterback unless they have to trade up to get a quarterback. Everything about Seattle I liked until Sam Darnold. Like you gave Sam Darnold money. Stop. You didn't want to be that team. Nobody wanted to be that team.
See, and
The Vikings didn't want to be that team.
And I
they're
guess
flirting with Aaron Rodgers.
And I wasn't over that edge completely on Sam Darnold. I'm like, all right, whatever. Maybe there's something here. You need a quarterback. I get it. But then adding Kupp to that mix is like, all right, now I can't even like do devil's advocacy for you at this point.
No, like take a chance on Justin Fields.
The Jets
Like,
are.
like I like
I love this for the Jets.
that's fine. Like I'm like that makes way more sense. Like if it can you imagine if the Jets would have tried to sign Sam Darnold to a big sizable contract?
Oh
Like
God,
I
no,
know that
no.
there's already history there,
Mhm.
but like remove the history from the two players.
Yeah.
As a Jets fan, I much rather prefer them taking a shot on Justin Fields than I do the money that Sam Darnold got. I know it was like a year guaranteed, but like it's a lot of money. It's $100 million plus for 3 years.
Let me ask Jeremy something, and this is maybe our way to kind of get out of this and get back into this. I have heard some theories that the reason the Jets did go after Justin Fields is that defensive minded coaches tend to fall in love with quarterbacks who beat them that they can't figure out. Do you think that's what happened with Aaron Glenn here?
That's pretty interesting.
I mean, it'd be silly to think him watching Justin Fields for as long as he didn't affect him some way, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Justin Fields had his best games of his career against the Lions.
100%.
Yeah,
Every
that's,
single
that's
time.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's certainly going to have an impact. No question.
And again, I'm not saying that to put him down. I heard people say that while disparaging it a little bit, but like at the same time, I feel like if you have someone like Tanner Engstrom and you want to create that kind of like run physical team that the Lions were doing, like yeah, Justin Fields fits. Just get him to not hold on to the ball so long, and you're groovy.
Yeah, just that.
Just that.
Get him
that
to
one
read
weird
defenses. That's it, and then he'll be great.
All right. Segment 2.
Yes, sir.
Pride of Detroit DOD cast back and talking free agency. So we made mention that the Roy Lopez signing, Ryan, kind of spelled a little bit of trouble for one Broderick Martin, which yeah, absolutely, I mean, at best we can say there's probably a camp battle to keep him on the roster at this point in the future for Broderick Martin. I think some fans are starting to stack Jenga blocks a little bit when it comes to Hendon Hooker. First, of course, still not going away is the fact that the Detroit Lions turned to Teddy Bridgewater in the playoffs rather than Hendon Hooker. First by bringing Teddy onto the roster, but then playing him over Hendon Hooker when he was needed in the NFC divisional round. Now, the Lions in free agency go out and sign quarterback Kyle Allen to the roster. And I think some fans are starting to once again stack those blocks and wonder if there is an issue with Hendon Hooker. And I hate to make the Kyle Allen signing all about Hendon Hooker, but I think it's one of the more interesting questions to ask first before anything else.
I think it's the important question. It's the important question to ask when it comes to team building. However, I would respond with, don't you want to put the pressure on Hendon Hooker? Don't you want to bring a guy into the room that's going to push Hendon Hooker and make him realize that, oh, you know what? Maybe I do need to show something to this coaching staff to prove my worth and to prove that I should be the backup quarterback and I can be trusted upon to be that number 2 guy, Jeremy. I think it's as simple as that. Like, I'm not saying that Kyle Allen comes in and he's immediately quarterback number 2. I don't think that by any means. I think that this truly signals that the Lions are saying the quarterback competition at QB2 is open.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I even go that far, to be quite honest. Like, in one sense, yes, the Lions like to create competition, period, right? They don't want anyone to go into training camp thinking the job is theirs and they don't have to earn it, right? So in this sense, maybe that's what it is. Like, it feels like maybe it's a Parcellsian move of let's get these guys motivated a little bit extra. I don't think Hendon Hooker had much of real competition last year. I mean, you could say I can't even remember his name. Who was the veteran that didn't end up making the team? It's been around for a couple of years. Can't even remember. But either way,
It was
and then you
so
bring in Jake
far
Fromley.
gone.
Chase Daniel was
No,
wasn't
that's
No.
Sudfeld.
Sudfeld.
Sudfeld. That's right.
But I think we also have to be real about who Kyle Allen is. He was third string in that weird quarterback room with the Steelers last year. He was the backup to Josh Allen for 1 year in Buffalo. Before that, let me tell you what happened with the Houston Texans, because I feel like this needs to be underlined and highlighted and italicized.
I have
and bolded.
I have another story of his career too, but mine's even further back. So go on.
In 2022, he was the backup to Davis Mills, our good friend with the draft neck. They benched Davis Mills. They brought in Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen played 2 games, and they said, oh my God, no. Let's instead run a 2-quarterback system with Davis Mills and Jeff Driscoll getting snaps in a game. They decided that duo was better than Kyle Allen.
DeAndre Hopkins deserves his own wing of the Hall of Fame.
That's the talent level that you're dealing with. He was beat out simultaneously by both Davis Mills and Jeff Driscoll. He is not better than Hendon Hooker.
Let's keep adding to this roster of people that he cannot beat out. Taylor Heineke, when he was with the Washington football team. He did beat out Dwayne. I mean, I'm not going to say he beat out Dwayne Haskins. He came in for Dwayne Haskins and replaced him until I think he dislocated his ankle. And then, then we can look at where he was with the Panthers, which I think he was 3rd behind Cam Newton. And no. He was he was 3rd behind Cam Newton and Taylor Heineke.
Right.
In Carolina.
And so here's the value that he brings. He's a veteran.
Also, he was benched for Will Grier.
The Lions
in Carolina as well.
The Lions like to have veteran guys, right? This is something we've talked about plenty of time, almost seemingly every offseason. It's good to have a guy who's been around, who's been in many systems, who knows how to read defenses, who can be an asset in the film room, who can be an asset to both Jared Goff and Hendon Hooker. But the guy that you want on the field, if Jared Goff goes down, will be Hendon Hooker over Kyle Allen.
It might be David Montgomery with the way that he can throw a ball.
Yeah. So this doesn't move the needle at all, is what you're saying. This is strictly QB3, might even be cut before the 53-man roster.
It would not surprise me if he is the practice squad quarterback all year.
It prevents Brad Holmes from sliding into home.
That's a deep cut.
That is so deep I don't even know what it's about. I mean, that's not surprising, my memory.
Brad Holmes' affinity for baseball analogies when it comes to addressing the quarterback position.
Well, as long as he's not holding a baseball bat, that's all I ask, Grant Stewart, Jeremy, is this anything more than a special team signing for the linebacker?
I mean, it is a special team signing. We don't have the full I don't think we have any of the contract details yet, other than I think it was said to be a fully guaranteed deal. So that's part of the puzzle that we're missing. I think there's a little bit of upside there. He got his first starts last year, and I thought looked okay in the film that I saw. Another really cool story, another Dan Campbell guy through and through. My question is just how many special teams linebackers does this team need?
Because all of them. More.
It's
what if we make the entire special teams out of linebacker?
You have your top 3 guys in Anzalone, Campbell, and Barnes, right? Malcolm Rodriguez is your top reserve, who's probably going to play a lot of special teams. You already have Trevor Nowaski, Anthony Pittman, and Ezekiel Turner, also guys who are premier special teams players who can do a little bit on defense. And now you add Grant Stewart to that list, and you have at least 4 guys that can play special teams pretty darn well and are questionable in terms of their defense. And so, I mean, 2 years ago, we joked about how there was going to be a bloodbath in the linebacker room in terms of the defensive starters. Now there's an even bigger bloodbath when it comes to the linebacker special teams unit. And part of me wants to make fun of it and be like, Brad Holmes, why do you need this many linebackers? But at the same time, you're pulling Jamal Adams off of some practice squad last year and saying, hey, you want to play linebacker again, buddy?
Quan Alexander, step on up.
Right? They brought in, I think it was 7 guys on their 53-man roster, and we're all like, that's way too many. What are you doing? And they went through every damn one of them.
And Jamal Adams was like, even when the Lions signed him, it was like, oh, the guy who you thought was a safety is probably going to play more like Malcolm Rodriguez. And all of us were like, okay, yeah, linebacker, go for it.
Sure, go for it.
I just, the only thing I would say about the Stewart signing is, uh, it Chris, it's the Dark Knight meme of the Joker with the pool stick and snapping it in two and being like,
Tryouts.
we're looking for the Jalen Reeves replacement.
Aggressive expansion.
That's the linebacker room. Aggressive expansion.
Let's talk about some returning players. Tim Patrick is back.
Yep.
We spent a break. This will come out
Yay.
in scraps talking about Cooper Kupp, but guess what, kids? We have Cooper Kupp at home.
He's bigger and more well equipped to be a wide receiver. It's Tim Patrick.
I think anyone who was like, the Lions, Jared Goff played with Cooper Kupp. The Lions need a receiver. Why not go? I think everyone shut up when they saw Cooper Kupp's contract for 3 years, $45 million. That was never happening in Detroit.
Well, some of that's just the Seahawks being crazy, but
The last
but he was
5
asking
games that
for
Cooper
$50
Kupp
million.
played. Yeah, the last 5 games that Cooper Kupp played. Like, tell me that guy deserved $45 million.
Right. Instead, you get Tim Patrick on a deal that's up to $4 million. So it's going to be less than $4 million. It's probably going to be a cap hit between $2 and $3 million.
As you have pointed out on X, on both your account and on POD, like up to is doing some heavy lifting this year on a lot of these contracts. Yeah.
No, I mean, Tim Patrick was probably the easiest re-signing this team had, even though it happened a little bit later in the week. I mean, you saw on Thursday or whatever it was, Tim Patrick even going up on Instagram saying the only team I want to play for is the Lions. It's a perfect fit. It allows you to kick the can down on figuring out the long-term wide receiver X another year if you want to. If the guy that you like isn't there in the draft this year, who cares? You've got Tim Patrick, and now you're 4 wide receivers deep that you're comfortable with. You're going to add to that room in one way or another because you like to have like 12 of them for training camp. And so maybe somewhere off of that scrap heap, whether it's a mid-round draft pick, a late-round draft pick, UDFAs, or another couple guys that they pick up in free agency, that room will fill out nicely. And it's just nice to have that one kind of checked off the box for what amounts to almost nothing in cap space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chris, I think whereas people may have been looking for an upgrade at wide receiver this offseason in free agency, a guy like Cooper Kupp, you want to get him because you need a guy to put the ball in their hands and make them make plays. The Lions have plenty of players who need the ball in their hands to make plays. They needed a Tim Patrick type player. However, Chris, where they were able to get Tim Patrick and then leave some flexibility for an addition in the draft, there's another position on this offense that they haven't afforded themselves that luxury, in my opinion.
No. I had another returning. Yeah, you know what? Let's dive right into one of the departures we had. So that was Kevin Zeitler. He signed with the Titans, I believe.
Yep,
they did,
which feels like a very odd move for
him.
But, hey,
it must be a chasing the money move. Like he went from
Absolutely.
a $6 million deal here in Detroit to a $9 million deal in Tennessee. So he got a 50% raise.
Would you say that's significant?
I certainly would, Ryan. And I would question anyone who would take offense with that.
Yeah, semantics.
We've all talked about interior offensive line being a big need for the Lions going into this draft. And thankfully enough, like this isn't a great offensive line class, but all the good prospects there are interior. I mean, better than needing a tackle right now, I suppose. Sure. But also the Lions do have a player in Christian Mahogany who had seen time subbing in for Zeitler when he was injured. And, you can go back and listen to some of our podcasts from the season itself. We were all fairly impressed with how Mahogany had played. Now, that's different from when you're subbing in a rookie to it's now your sophomore year in the NFL, and we're asking you to potentially play 17 games.
Yep.
And I guess the question I have for you, Jeremy, is do you think Mahogany's ready? Is this where they're going to step up or,
I mean, it's got to happen sooner or later. I think it probably does happen this year. My issue is that this is your offensive line. Don't leave anything to question. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's a question mark. Graham is a little bit of a question mark because he's certainly not at the point in his career where he's going to improve. Last year wasn't his best year, but it also wasn't terrible. So if you have Graham around for another year or two, it's not a terrible thing. But I think it's fair to say that last year Graham and Zeitler versus Graham this year and Mahogany is a step down. It is. Because Christian Mahogany at his best, at his peak, if at your most optimistic estimates of him as a first-time full-time starter, is not going to reach the level of Kevin Zeitler. And Graham is probably more likely to have a worse season than a better season this year, just by the nature of aging. I'm a worse athlete than I was the year before. That's how it works when you get into your 30s. So there needs to be improvement there. And also, who's your depth? Who is the one guy that you're going to step in and be the guy? Because having Mahogany as your backup, that's great. Cool. Your backup now is Natane Muti.
Iwashika?
He's not even signed.
I know.
Sorsdahl?
Sorsdahl, is he playing tackle? Is he playing guard?
It's like the great conundrum of this team. And I sent you guys that Mike Clay chart where, I mean, he had the offensive line for the Lions ranked as a 9 out of 10. There were only a couple of other teams. I think it was the Eagles were a 9.
The Eagles and the
Eagles and the Broncos. Yeah, but like I would not put the Lions offensive line at 9. Like I think right now, like I love 3 of the pieces, right? Like
sure.
I'm still in love with Taylor Decker, despite everybody wanting to trade him. Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnow. Like you have 3 either above average or star players at their respective positions. I have question marks about the guard positions, and those are the positions that almost concern me the most when you have a guy like Jared Goff as your quarterback.
Sure. Yeah. And so I like Chris said, there are options in the draft, but we all know how this operates. This organization operates. Fill your needs in free agency, get the best guys at any position in the draft. And so I think there's still work to do here. And if they go out and get a Will Hernandez, that's good enough for me. You're creating competition. You're improving your depth. That's what I want to see. And then if you want to go, like guard remains a long-term need. So no matter what they do the rest of free agency, it's in play for the draft because long-term needs is where you actually address the things that actually get addressed in the draft. So,
well, speaking about another position where there might be need in the draft and still work to be done, I do think, Jeremy, since I believe you are very well equipped on the numbers on this, we needed to talk about one more returning player before we start to look at this from an eagle-eye picture. Levi Onwuzurike.
Yes. Returning with the Detroit Lions. Felt like he I don't know if he had tested the market just to see what he could get out there, but I believe you had you broke down this contract, and when this came out, you were talking about this a lot in that this really feels like a master class right now for the Detroit Lions on the value they were able to get a Levi Onwuzurike. And we had kind of mentioned this in the I think we mentioned this in the emergency pod. You and me did too, but this year's defensive tackle free agency class, holy God, man. The money that was flying around there was obscene. Yep.
And 1 year, $4 million, 3.5 guaranteed on Levi Onwuzurike feels like I know there's some injury history that they're going to have to contend with no matter what, but still, considering what the market was, wow.
It's a shock to the system when that contract hit the books, right? I mean, we talked about it all offseason about how none of us could really predict what his contract was going to look like, but I think our low estimates were like $7 million, $8 million. The high estimates were $15 million a year. Now, it's hard to give the Lions credit for what the market ended up being, Because I feel like if Levi Onwuzurike had other options out there, if he had a $10 million option, he would have taken it. So you can't just like give the Lions credit because they got him on a cheap deal, because that's what the market was. Like, that's just what the market was. But at the same time, do I prefer Levi Onwuzurike at $4 million, upwards of $5.5 million, to, let's say, Javon Kinlaw at $15 million a year? 10 times out of 10, yeah, I prefer that. One, it's how this team operates on the 1 year kind of prove it deals. And this is very much a prove it deal for Levi, in that if he balls out this year, great. You've now put together 2 pretty darn good seasons. You're going to get paid a lot of money because interior defensive linemen get paid a lot of money, and you do have a lot of tread left on the tires.
You're going to get the Javon Kinlaw deal next year.
Right.
Levi Onwuzurike.
And so it works out, and maybe the Lions can recoup a 3rd round compensatory pick for that. I think Levi is better than clearly what other teams think he is. I think he fills a tremendous need for an interior pass rusher, particularly for the first month of the season when you might not have Aleem McNeil. I'd still like to see the Lions add more to that specific position, but getting Levi back on that kind of a deal that is extremely team friendly is a big win for the Lions.
The only thing I'll add is that I was very anti the Lions signing Levi to anything north of like $9-10 million a year. I felt like that was not going to be a good bit of roster construction on a 1 year, $5.5 million prove it deal. I feel pretty comfortable if for the first month and a half of the season that the Lions' 3 interior defensive linemen are Levi, Lopez, and DJ Reader. Like I feel pretty comfortable with those 3 guys.
It's okay.
Throw Mekhi Wingo. Yeah, throw him in there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it could be worse. And then, Pascal can play inside a little bit. It's doable. It's workable. And then eventually you'll get Aleem back, and suddenly it's not only workable, it's good.
It's probably like one of the better like rotations of interior defensive linemen, I think, in the NFL.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that covers every transaction so far, at least as of the 16th of March, as we were recording right now, for the Detroit Lions.
Except for the tight end, which we don't have to get into.
We don't need to get into ya boy.
Ya boy, as we're calling Kenny ya boy. I honestly haven't dug too much into him, but he's TE3 at best. But that tight end room is kind of empty beyond the top 2, so that's another position they'll have to put some more work into. This guy caught a preseason Hail Mary, though. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Let's talk about.
Sorry to bore you.
Sorry to ya boy you.
Let's talk about the rest of free agency right now, because we talked about it. Just because it's 1 week of it doesn't mean it's over. Doesn't mean that there's nothing else to be had out there. There's at least one name I know Ryan is absolutely in love with, and so am I. That could kind of waiting and hoping, and maybe the Lions will make a move on that. But there is some needs still that when we kind of hit on them, Ryan, like interior offensive line, especially at guard, is absolutely still a need right now. What else would you say? And as we start to look at names out there, are there any you really like?
I know you said me, but I think that's more so Jeremy, who loves Von Miller. Not that I would be against Von Miller. However, I will say that I think the biggest overreaction from Lions fans might be if Brad Holmes doesn't take a defensive end on day 1 of the draft.
Which is possible.
Which I think, I don't want to say it's likely, but I will say that I wouldn't be shocked if Marcus Davenport is your DE2 when the opening, to training camp happens.
Yeah.
And I know that from the way that people reacted to Marcus Davenport's re-signing on the internet, which even drove me further away from Twitter, I think that's a spot where you should get prepared that Marcus Davenport really factors into the other edge spot across from Aiden Hutchinson. Now, does a guy like Von Miller factor into that? Yeah, absolutely. If the Lions can get like an edge rusher, a true like this is what we hoped that James Houston could have eventually been. Yeah, I think they'd be very much into that. Jeremy, don't you think that Von Miller kind of fits the bill as a
Yeah.
1 year? Do we want to give him 12, 13, 14 million dollars a year? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of the format of the deal you'd be getting, right? We've seen a couple of these other veteran edge guys get similar deals. 1 year 10 million, 1 year's 12 million.
Khalil Mack.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the kind of deals that I thought maybe fit the Lions best. It's not a long-term deal that's affecting your cap. Obviously, it's still impacting your 2026 cap, even if he isn't on the books in 2026, because you're carrying over less money. All of it works together. But at the same time, they do have room to manipulate a little bit this year, and they have room to manipulate next year. So it's something that I think is within the realm of possibility. It's something that I think makes some sense. You're not getting, 12 sacks a season, Von Miller. I think we all need to understand that. But I think the thing that's tough for some people to swallow if they do something like that, it would be, why not just keep Zadarius Smith, who was essentially on that exact same kind of deal. It was a 1 year, I think 11 million split over the next 2 years contract. Why go replace that with Von Miller on the exact same deal? And it's a fair argument to make. I would argue that Von Miller is just a better player, even at this point in his career. But I think that's the main rub. And I'm very much a never say never type of person, but those of you that are hoping that Zadarius Smith is on his way back on a cheaper deal, I'd be very surprised.
No, I think that one seems fairly like a closed door at this point.
Zadarius Smith is probably going to end up to the Cowboys on a $13 million a year deal. That's what's probably going to happen.
Get the bread, get the money. You need what you can at this point. So besides Will Hernandez, are there any other guards? I mean, let's just go ahead and say I don't think you're getting someone like Brandon Scherf.
I think you could.
You could? Really? You think that's doesn't matter, that could probably be a pretty rich deal? I think Scherf
30.
probably commands something probably 6-7 million.
That's what you would have got Zeitler back for, though. I think
that's true. Yeah, you know what? That's a fair point.
That's spend on Zeitler, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's 34. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler, but he's obviously past those days. So yeah, I know. I'd take Scherf. I'd be pretty happy about Scherf. Will Hernandez. There's a Tevin Jenkins, which anytime you're plucking from the Bears offensive line, I have questions. But he's considered one of the best available. I'm not in on that one as much. I don't know. It's hard for.
He met with the Seahawks, which makes me question a lot of the idea of bringing him in. To be quite fair,
I'm pulling for Will Hernandez for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's very possible because he's coming off an ACL, and so Brad Holmes would be like, "Oh, dollar signs, red dollar signs."
Don't mind if
eyes.
I do.
But also he seems to be pretty good friends, or at least somewhat tight, with Roy Lopez. Seeing as they were both from the Cardinals, both line play, that both come from Mexican heritage, and a lot of people had a big hubbub about Lopez sporting Will Hernandez's brand, and so, with the eyeballs suggesting that maybe he's going to come here, and also a really good guy. So Will Hernandez is probably the guy I'm pulling for most to win that job, to come over here in Detroit, but Scherf would make me just as happy.
Will Hernandez, week 5 last year. Got off to a great start, suffered a knee injury to end the season. That's Brad Holmes special, ladies and gentlemen.
Torn ACL. Cha-ching.
Cha-ching, cha-chong.
Get him at that discounted rate. Brad Holmes loves the discount aisle. He's all about the, when he's in the grocery store, I bet he goes for the marketer's special of food that's almost
something it's almost expired and it's got the Kroger's card on it that's ooh, extra markdown.
Managers.
I mean, but that's kind of what's left here is you either got guys who are very patient on choosing where they're going in free agency, guys like Von Miller who are kind of older and still trying to stick out for one more deal, or just trying
Yeah.
to find the ideal place that might be one of their last spots they get to sign with, or it's just going to be guys closer to a name that you're just really not going to know at this point. Like, it's just, but that's also what free
Rotational
agency feels like it is every year when we get to this point as well.
Plus, I think it needs reiterating again how many starting jobs are open right now in Detroit.
Not many.
Maybe a guard position, maybe not. An edge position, probably. And I might be out. Like, that's it.
Yeah. All the cornerback positions the Lions still need is like depth. They need
Yep.
a depth CB.
You need a depth safety. You need depth tight ends. You need depth wide receivers. But all those starting jobs are taken. And they've been taken, which is, again, why they did not splash in free agency. They didn't need to.
And this also wasn't exactly a very strong free agent class this year.
Also
You don't need any linebackers, though. The Lions are set on linebacker. They
No,
don't need
one
any
more. We
linebackers.
could just need. It's like Ocean's 11. I think we need one more. One more special teamer, a juggler this time.
trade Ezekiel Turner for a 2035 seventh.
Oh,
Jeez,
Ezekiel
wow.
Turner.
Why is Ezekiel
I'm one of
Turner
Turner's
catching?
biggest supporters too, but it's just like
Why are you doing this to Ezekiel Turner?
No,
what is happening here?
I
Because
wrote an
Jared-
article on why
Ezekiel
he should
Turner, do
resign.
not listen to this podcast.
It's because Jeremy's a Lawrence Strickland truther. That's why.
No, this is me trying to get him to a place where he's going to play, and win-win situation. Lions get some feedback. Win-win.
Why are you trying to banish Ezekiel Turner to the Jacksonville
No,
Jaguars? How
I
dare
didn't say-
you?
No, trade him to a contender.
Best I can do is Seattle Seahawks.
Oof.
Seattle's a cool place to live. He'd love it.
NFC West might be kind of a bloodbath.
Yeah, I don't think the 49ers are.
No, the Rams are going to run away with it.
Not if Matt Stafford gets, his arm broken off in week 7.
Not if Kelly has anything to do with it.
All right.
All right.
All right,
Her
yeah,
name
yeah,
on the
yeah.
NFL podcast.
It's, if you want more of this kind of stuff, download the scraps when it comes out later in the week.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right. We're going to have a midweek mailbag coming this week as well. Yes, Jeremy. Okay, cool. Awesome. Scraps, already mentioned, it's taken a couple weeks off because of how busy we've been and with the, mailbag and emergency podcast and everything. But we have time on the schedule here unless there's some other mega blockbuster signing or trade. And then I think from there we move rapidly into Jeremy's favorite time of year, draft coverage.
Yeah. And in a couple weeks here, I'm gonna be joining you guys from sunny Florida down at the owners' meetings.
Ooh.
Owners meetings. Look at you, fancy. Best I can do to add to that front is if you happen to be listening to a Fox Sports Radio affiliate on the mornings of Tuesday of the March 18th or Wednesday, March 19th, I think from like 6 a.m. Eastern to 9, I am apparently going to be doing update anchoring about the Dodgers Japan series to start the MLB year. So that's my own
fun.
personal news.
Baseball.
Baseball, it's back. I think there was a time once upon where I really wanted to do like parachute in series with like Pistons and Red Wings and Tigers. And I think I dropped that idea a couple of years ago, Ryan, because it was just too sad.
It's not sad anymore.
No.
April in the
you
D,
could even
baby.
say it's okay, he just beat me to it.
Sorry.
April in the D. Hey, guess what? We'll see you Starside.
Recording stopped.
Midweek fail bad.
Still no chat.
Still no chat.
Well, no, I just switched over the scene. It doesn't show
okay.
up until new chats show up. But
All right, then let's see it in the chat, guys.
I can see you typing. I'm going to preempt you. Nope.
Gattaca!
I do have a couple alerts, or at least just one alert. Our good friend Dan Pask with the 45 months says, I think that makes Twitch quintuplets. Go Lions.
Quintuplets.
It's true. 9 times 5, 45.
Is that a rhyme?
No, I was doing the count by five or count by fingers.
I don't.
How much cap do we have left? It's impossible to know because DJ Reader's contract details are not out. In fact, nobody's contract details are out except for like Marcus Davenport,
Onwuzurike's.
Levi Onwuzurike. Yeah.
Which I'm so glad that Davenport's contract came out.
Right. Everyone can see that. What was it initially reported as? I don't remember. But it was definitely one of those.
One
up to,
it was 1 year 4.5.
right, and it ended up.
And
being
then
like
then the
two.
up to came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, Ryan, and all your bets on Duke, what if Cooper Flag can't play?
That's fine. Like I'm not very heavily invested in. Actually, I'd win the least amount of money if Duke won. So that's okay.
Okay.
I
Good.
can survive. Michigan, how big
Fuck
of an
Duke.
impact do you think Rakestraw could make given that he's healthy? I will say that if Rakestraw has a really good year too, and I guess a really good year too would be he wins the nickel corner spot
Yeah.
and he plays exceptionally well. Good job. You don't have to re-sign a Meek Robertson because hopefully Terry and Arnold is good enough.
True.
You know,
I do
and-
like
and-
having Amik as your backup to both spots, though. As your primary backup to both spots.
I do, but I think Meek plays himself out of Detroit.
That's
You know
fair.
what I mean? Like a contract that, again, it's kind of similar to the Levi situation.
Right.
Like a Meek very much signed a prove it deal for a corner.
Yeah.
Like he just went somewhere with like a little bit more term because he got 2 years, but then he also like he has the runway to like play into a starter's role, which he did last year.
Right.
If Rakestraw plays the nickel spot and he's a starter level and you're like, damn, that guy's a dude, I all of a sudden feel pretty good about the Lions kind of long term.
Sure. I mean, yeah,
I-
you have the three guys there. It's interesting to me because if this is how it plays out, it's almost like Amik Robertson is in the same position that Malcolm Rodriguez is in, which is like you should feel blessed to have him as your primary backup because he's a starting level talent and he's not going to be around next year.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I kind of what they do next year at linebacker is very interesting to me because
Like is Anzalone still here?
Right. Anzalone and Malcolm are your two guys. I had this long conversation with Eric this morning on Slack because he doesn't believe that Campbell, what's his first name? The Jihad Campbell.
Yeah.
He thinks Jihad Campbell is now essentially off the board. Now
For the Lions.
For the Lions. And part of that is he doesn't think he's going to be there, which I don't have an opinion on because the draft is weird and you never know.
Sure. I have seen things though that say like he's put himself like in the top 14. Yeah.
Right. But Eric's general belief, and I don't want to necessarily speak for him completely, but is that once the Derek Barnes extension happened, Jihad became much more unlikely. My argument is that it's not at all less unlikely because you have Alex Anzalone and Malcolm Rodriguez facing free agency next year. And so maybe Jihad wouldn't play a ton in year one. Show me a position other than edge and guard where there is an opportunity for a first-round rookie to play in year one. And then in year two, you either move Derek Barnes to the Will spot, to Alex Anzalone's spot, and you play Jihad at
Sam.
Mm-hmm. Or you find out a different way that works. And suddenly have a cheap option to complement Barnes's big contract and what will probably eventually be Jack Campbell's big contract.
Jihad is so fascinating because, like, yeah, he gets a lot of headlines that he played Sam at Alabama, but like, he's kind of been able to play at other linebacker areas, and like the pass rush skill on Jihad alone, complemented with that, he could play Sam is like he's a multi-tool, very fascinating linebacker prospect. And I think like that flexibility is also what I think, to your point, makes a scenario like you're envisioning sound even more enticing.
It's gonna put, and this is something that I think people are just gonna have to in general get used to. But if the Lions are picking in their late 20s, there's a very good chance that rookie is not going to start in his first year.
You're gonna have to find some steals, and like you're gonna have to dig deep, and you're gonna have to find, probably spend some developmental stuff too. Yeah.
It's just a matter of where the roster is, and it's a matter of not drafting for need, which has proven to be the right strategy for this general manager. And so I know we're all like, he's got to go get an edge. He's got to go get a guard in round one. I don't think they're going to force that need if it's not there. Both of those positions are long-term needs. Don't get me wrong. They're not only short-term needs, they're long-term needs, right? Who is going to be the starting guard opposite Mahogany in the long term? I don't know. Who's going to be the starting? I mean, who? Eric pointed this out.
You're going to have questions eventually with Frank Ragnow as well. Like how many more years he's playing? Like who's taken over the center?
There's not an edge signed on the roster right now beyond this upcoming year. So like that is a long-term need and would be acceptable to draft. But I just don't like the idea that whoever they get at 28 needs to. We went through this last year. I remember all of the people saying whoever you get has to have an immediate impact because this is a Super Bowl year. That's not where we're at anymore. We're already at a Super Bowl talented level. You need to get guys that can play in the long term. You're playing the long game with the draft, and so you're filling long-term needs there. If they don't contribute year one, that's not a bust. That's not you failed.
I feel like, again, I don't know. Maybe we'd still be doing this if the Lions just simply hadn't won a Super Bowl, Ryan, but I really do feel like a lot of the critique coming out is like there is some ingrown like frustration, impatience. I had someone reach out to me because I know we had that rant in the mini pod, Jeremy, about I went off on it about like I'm tired of hearing from fans talking about how I've waited 30, 40 years. You don't tell me to be patient anymore. Like, cool. Then I guess reality is just not going to be patient with you. Like, sorry. But I had someone out like reaching out to me because they're so sick and tired of hearing that line from fans. And like, I don't want to call fans spoiled, but I do feel like maybe if they had just like won, like, I don't know what would have stopped this kind of like impatience and this recklessness, and it almost feels like teetering on just desiring to be unhappy, Ryan. I know no sports fan ever like is complacent, but I guess I'm a little shocked at how like
how quickly
we're a lot of
turned.
Well, like, and it's like you have no reason to like 15 wins. God damn, that's amazing. And it's like, well, you didn't win a playoff game. Cool. But I don't know how much of that is just Lions fans who just don't watch the rest of the NFL and don't understand how damn hard this is, or if it's just I don't know. I don't know. I'm as someone who watches the NFL more than like, some years I watched the Lions in the past. Like I'm kind of throwing up my hands a little bit. It's like I don't know. Like they're doing everything right. Like and. This is still, I don't know.
I thought it was a bit wild to like hear some of the early offseason discourse be about like how many wins would be something that we would be talking about with the Detroit Lions. Like the Lions won 15 games, but like if they dropped to 12, like would you see that as like I don't care if they win 10 games. Like if they're built for the playoffs because you look at their schedule, like if I think that they're a good football team and they're a healthy football team, like I trust more of the pillars than I don't. Like I trust Dan Campbell, I trust the offensive line. I would much rather trust this defense with Aiden Hutchinson intact, right? So like that speaks to that like being healthy part of it, but I think that getting wrapped up in wins and losses about the regular season is silly. And I think that's where you kind of get caught up in what you're talking about, Chris, where it's like, well, I don't have the patience to wait on a team that isn't willing to sell itself down the river for, this player that's going to put them over the top, right? Like,
Theoretically,
Yeah.
which was always like it's always assumed on this 1-0 base on like an on-off binary basis, and not like this is maybe a chance this person puts you
Right.
over the top. And how few free agents are there out there that'll put you over the top?
there weren't
Like-
any. There weren't any free agent edge
And a
players.
second edge doesn't put you over the top. It doesn't.
What-
Yeah.
I think the thing that Chris was getting at that is kind of like almost funny was how some people in this fan base, I don't want to generalize too much here, went
No,
from
the loud portion of it. Let's
went
just-
from
yeah,
like
louds.
just give me a consistent winner to please let us don't be the Steelers. Which is like, wait, the Steelers, they were the goal like 4 years ago, and now it's like,
Yeah.
oh God, don't be the Steelers, the team that makes the playoffs every year but doesn't get any further. It's like, it's just, to me, it's funny. Like I'm not saying, I get the argument. Like I get you don't want to be this team that just pseudo competes every year.
Yeah,
Right.
But I would
the
argue
Lions
that
this
the
year-
Lions, over the last 2 years, the Lions have not been that team. Let's be clear.
You don't wanna
far
be
more
that
of a
team.
contender than the
Aren't
Steelers have been.
The Lions aren't being an also ran that is like inching into the playoffs, and we're all
Right.
clapping. Hey, another 10-win season for Mike Tomlin. Congratulations, and then getting like bounced unceremoniously. That's not what happened last year.
Right.
That's not like you gotta like be honest with yourself what happened last year and like how fucking hard it is to win 15 games. And I know you like we're hoping that the playoffs went a different way, and maybe because of how they went, you want to denigrate the 15 wins. But now you have to actually be fucking serious with me about how injured this team was, how miraculous it was they won 15 games in the first place.
Can I start it unironically, but can we start the Lions should trade pick 28 to the team that wants to move up at the end of the first round and take a quarterback? Can we start that shtick that always starts?
What
We-
year
we
was
did-
it where they did that? They had the 32nd pick because of the Rams.
2022. Yeah, and then they traded up to take J-Mo.
That's right.
Um,
Who were like the quarterbacks at the bottom that people thought was? I need to go back to that draft.
it
What
was
draft was that,
Malik
20?
Willis and Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ritter.
That's right. You're right.
Yeah.
When did
Yeah.
Pickett end up going?
20 to the Steelers,
Oh,
the team that we were
So
talking
it never
about.
happened.
No, and then there
Oh,
was
and then
no
there was
other
just a
first-round quarterback,
humongous gap before.
Desmond Ritter, which come on.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry,
Laughable.
T Skog. I forgot about your list cast.
At 70.
T Skog asked us way back about a
Oh, yeah.
top 5. I think you should leave skits that speak to us.
I pulled up my rankings for that actually because
Mm.
I have that in a doc. saved.
It wasn't even because of the this. You've just always had these rankings there.
It actually was because of the list cast. I forgot,
Oh.
but I do have these always ready to go.
That's a hard pull off the top of my head.
I realized that I haven't done it for season 3 though. I only have season 1 and season 2.
I feel like the one that speaks to me the most is the doggy door one, but
Yeah.
only the part where he's like, how do I get to a point where not going into my job because I'm dead gave me a sense of relief? What have they done to us? Just that part.
Yeah. No. Yeah. 100%. I think for me, definitely is. I have this listed under tier 2 for season 2, but it speaks to me as you guys would be clugging a few cans too if you had my wife.
The Jamie
Taco.
the Jamie Taco sketch.
Yeah.
Yes. Which I mean, I love the premise. Like forget about the execution of the whole flashback and all that stuff, but just the premise of a guy that gets like so self-conscious and upset that he played along with a razzing of their wives joke is very funny to me.
At his like middle-aged friend's like poker sleepover.
Right. Yes.
That apparently he backs out of all the time.
To the point where he had to leave and go home. He was not willing to spend the night with them anymore.
It's a good one.
It was a great one. I'm trying to think of any that actually like have meaning that aren't just like overly silly. I'd say if I was on a dating show, I would probably just enjoy the accoutrements more so than the actual like interacting and dating. So yes, the zip line. I mean, they also eat like awesome food on those shows and things like that. So like that'd be the fun part of it.
They're like at a resort, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like all expenses paid.
Yeah. So I'll say that one too.
I will say that I did get nachos with my wife last week, so I feel like the nacho sketch kind of applied because she was taking a lot of the chips that had most of the toppings. And that's against
a great answer.
Store policy.
That is a great answer because I feel like you can relate that to a lot of stuff. So a good example is on Wednesday or Thursday or whenever Thursday, they had us at the Lions facility for way longer than expected. And they got us Freddy the Pizza Man pizza kind of as a like, sorry. But like you have to pick which slice you want. You have to like, do I go for a third slice or should I not be that guy and just take two?
Yeah.
And then I felt bad because poor Will Birchfield from 97.1, who, by the way, is really good at his job as the writer there and occasionally on Foxy, whatever. But he missed it when the pizza arrived and had one slice left when he came back because no one had realized that he had stepped out. So, Will, sorry, buddy.
Sorry.
You
have to be associated with Mike Valani.
Sorry.
I'm not kidding. Like, I wish I could play one of the hypotheticals I heard for you guys because it was exactly what he was talking about earlier on the radio this week. He was basically setting up a hypothetical of like, would you rather be a team like the Steelers for 4 years, or would you rather be a team that went all in on a Super Bowl for 2 years? And I'm like, what hypothetical is that? I don't even understand.
Also,
you can't be a Super Bowl contender over those 4 years.
I just find the
but
question
you are
useless.
For those two in this hypothetical.
I just find the question particularly useless though. Like your run is your run. Like like you don't get a choice in this matter. You genuinely do not get a choice.
Their roster is so much better than the Steelers. It's unreal that they're getting those comparisons.
It is. If I'm going to have one word that I try to describe to someone about what Detroit sports fandom is, I'm sorry, because of these people, I have to use the word insecure. It's insecure because you feel like the end is like we're already talking about people envisioning the end of this run before we've even like seen what this run even looks like.
Like, is there an offensive lineman you would trade from the Steelers for Penei Sewell? Like, no. Like, would you rather have the Steelers quarterback or Jared Goff? Like, would you rather have the running backs for the Lions, or would you rather have DK Metcalf or George Pickens than Amon-Ra St. Brown? Like, it's just like, it's not even comparable. Right. I don't get it. Like, to Chris's point, I think it's just like a useless like exercise in hypotheticals. Like, I don't really get. Like,
I know part of it is
what point are you trying to make? Like, are you just trying to make the point that they should go all in? Well, then just like make an argument about that.
Yeah,
because
that's what I don't like about this.
Is what they're
like,
doing,
and again, right? for whatever people have with the problem of the hot take, there's no take here at all with these exercises. What is your point? What are you trying to prove to someone? What is your fucking opinion? Because it doesn't even seem like you have a fucking opinion. You're just trying to like rile people up and just make them upset.
No, what they're trying to do is lead a horse to water. They're saying, well, what would you rather be? This crappy team that just makes the playoffs or this team that has a shot at the Super Bowl for 2 years? Well, of course you're going to do the shot at Super Bowl for 2 years,
then,
but you're misrepresenting the other side.
But also just say it with your chest then. Say like
they do.
Make your take.
I'm sure they do.
No, but just make your fucking take rather than doing like the gibbering like this is how I appeal to the fan. Just say your opinion without trying to do these like histrionic appeals is what I'm saying.
I don't listen to Valani enough to know whether he's I assume he's not afraid to say it with his chest.
Can we just watch this on air real quick? Please,
really-
please, just humor me. Just humor me.
I swear to God, if this gets us
I'm trying
demonetized
not
on
to start
YouTube, I'm
here's the
gonna
thing is,
punch you in the face.
I don't want to start fights with these guys. I really don't.
I'm not trying to either. I'm trying to understand where they're coming from because, like, I don't think that Mike is like. I think Mike is a very intelligent person.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't get this take at all.
I'll share it
Oh,
so
this
you
was
can
a
see it.
Mike take, not a Rico thing. Okay.
Well, I mean, if it's a Mike take, then it's a Rico take. But
All right, here we go. This is everyone blame Ryan for what's about to happen.
A divide or a disconnect within the Lions fan base. There's a part of this fan base that, on this show, we call them bots. Whether they're Steve bots,
fuck
Brad
off!
bots, Scott bots. The organization does no wrong. Everything Brad Holmes does is perfection. Every player you sign is a Hall of Famer. Every player you let go is a shameless bum. There is a portion of the fan base. That's how you behave. That you believe you never need to make a splash. You never need to sign a big free agent. You just stay the course. The process. We're going to draft, develop, and sign, and it's all going to be okay, and we're going to win a Super Bowl. There's the other side of the fan base, or at least a big portion, that say, look, we love the work that Brad has done, and we love that the Lions are good again. But being good for a prolonged time without ever being great is a road to immense frustration, and no one, not even the bots, will end up happy. Example, the Baltimore Ravens. They've been good for a while. It has won them nothing. Do I believe DJ Reed is this exponential improvement? No, I do not. I think he's a good player. I think Carlton Davis is a good player. I am going to offer you something. And by the way you answer it, I think you're telling me what group you're in. Choice A, Rico. You just stay the course, draft, develop, sign your own. You're not going all in, and you're going to be good for the next 4 years. Can't guarantee anything, but you'll be good. Choice B, all in, F them picks, restructure, spend, A+ effort only. You have your best shot at a Super Bowl the next 2 years, and then the future is wholly uncertain. Which of those describes you as a fan? Which camp are you in? Because I think that is distinctly a line in the sand as it pertains to Lion fan. I view it that if Brad is so special, you can go all in, retool it, go all in again. You know how I know it? We've watched it in Philadelphia to the tune of 3 Super Bowls. Is there a...
Hold on 1 second. No, hold on 1 second. The reason why I threw my headset is like, I said I don't want to start a fight with these people. You cannot call people bots. Like, you just fucking cannot.
that's what
you
you take
have
offense with
started
out of all that?
No. That you cannot start from this idea that there are some that, like, first off, that is right wing, that is like Nazi right wing Elon Musk as fuck to be like, beep, oh, they're NP, that's calling them NPCs. That, like, there's a bunch of people who are just like, their opinions are like not real. Don't fucking call people bots.
okay, but I don't know if that was. I think his point was that they are bots in the sense that what also got you super worked up one time was the whole like company line thing. He was trying to say like these are people who just eat up whatever Brad Holmes is going to do, and it's the
Sure.
greatest thing since the last move that he made.
But that's I'm sorry. But that also then cuts out a wide swath of people who are actually like, you've basically painted like, here, I am the only thinking man on earth, and you have no thoughts in your head.
Correct.
You are programmed by my
extremely
enemy, the
condescending.
person. It's extremely condescending, and it doesn't even grant. That's like if I took everyone on YouTube and called you guys just fucking NPCs. Whatever you're, it's like, you're unpleasant NPCs. You've been pre-programmed that all you think is misery and death. Like, I mean, I think you're full of that, but I'm not going to say that you've been pre-programmed to that or to just completely write you off. Because at that point, what you have done at that moment is you've basically said, I'm not even going to bother to reach out to you. I can't convince you of anything. I've just decided you just like, I can't even, like, it's, man, I can't do, like, I don't, like, even Cowherd doesn't do that kind of shit. At least be man enough that if you're going to put your fucking opinion out there, that you'll at least say, here is something for all of you. And I, like, okay, there's a lot of people out here that don't share my opinion. Fine. But here's something I will challenge you to on this regard. Instead of just, oh, you're just an NPC. You're not real. You're not someone to engage with. Like, that is arrogance extreme.
Show me where the Philadelphia Eagles went all in.
They didn't. That's the other thing too, is vastly
Because they
misrepresenting
signed
the
Saquon
history.
Barkley, they went
Vastly
all in.
misrepresenting the history of the Philadelphia Eagles there.
But also saying like the Baltimore Ravens have done nothing. They've won 2 Super Bowls over the past 25 years.
Right.
And also have been like
Qualifying
the
the
Baltimore Ravens,
Ravens
who like are
as
probably
a
in
good,
more
not
Super
great
Bowls if
team
it's not
is
for like
bull.
like
Like even
and-
if you're just talking the last 5 years, they've been one of the greatest. And yes, I'm going to qualify this by saying regular season teams, and that'll be like, well, that's what I'm talking about. Who cares about regular? No, if you show you are good across a regular season, the way that the Ravens have, all of those teams have been good enough to win the Super Bowl. Why didn't they? It's not because they didn't go all in. It's because it's a single elimination playoff, and you've been hitting Patrick
And you're on
Mahomes
the side.
every single year.
yeah.
And Mark
And Josh
Andrews
Allen.
drops a pass and
Right.
a 2-point conversion.
I
right? Like,
to people who think I'm overreacting a little bit on the bots line, like I have a very simple premise in my life. It's like it's a line I love to use. Like you can hate, but do it honestly. Do it forthright. Like make your point without just completely dismissing a person. You might hate their entire opinion, you might hate their entire belief thing, but at least engage with like forthright about it. Like I hate the bot line. I hate NPC. I hate that shit. I hate it so much because we have this predilection on the internet to just look at people and say, oh, they're on the other side of that like typing this thing out on the phone or what. They're not real. No, those are real people. They go to a job just like you. They have a family just like you. Are they unpleasant in this moment? Yes. Are they probably channeling their worst impulses? Yes. But they are a person, and I refuse to listen to anyone who has decided in any case, in any argument, to just simply say, this is not something real humans have an opinion of.
Just like the dismissal of
it's
like,
weak.
oh, you're either a Lions homer who can't think straight, or you're on my side. Is just it's terrible arguing on its surface.
But from there to his actual hypothetical,
right?
Like it didn't seem as it was as dismissive, because it also felt like the quote unquote like divide or the line in the sand that he was talking about. I don't know how real that is. I guess I see or I hear the people online talking about the Myles Garrett stuff but like I'm like more so dismissive of that. Like that seems like noise, whereas like Mike is trying to make that as like that is a very like those people have a point, and I'm like I don't think those people really have like a point, because I'm to your point, Jeremy. Like what was the all-in move that the Eagles made? Like, I don't know what that move.
I'm still waiting to hear.
What was the all-in move that the Chiefs made? What to trade up for a quarterback? Well, the Lions don't need to do that. So, like, what has been their all-in move outside of Patrick Mahomes that has put them over the top?
This keeps coming back to Lions fans believe there were 2 players available for sale who were never available for sale. 30 times the Raiders and Browns said Max Crosby and Myles Garrett aren't for sale. Lions fans plug their ears, and like the particular people who kept saying this plug their ears and pretended they didn't hear anything. They told you over and over and over again, Myles Garrett ain't for sale. Myles Garrett ain't for sale. Max Crosby ain't for sale. And when they get signed for new contracts, what happens? You ignored the fact that they were never for sale in the first place and said, that's a failure by the Detroit Lions to get that player.
This is all the Rams' fault. Can we agree on that? This is all the Rams' fault.
No. This is all Matthew Stafford's fault, which is actually Kelly Stafford's fault. This is all Kelly Stafford's fault. Had she not told Matthew that she was sick of living in Detroit,
I genuinely, you know what? There's a lot of phrases I hate in the sports lexicon, but F them picks might have rocketed to the top.
This is all
to Jeremy's point. I like defense wins championships. You've got to have a quarterback. What other things can you throw out there? Like I don't know. But like
if one of Matthew Stafford's interceptions doesn't get dropped in the playoffs that year, there is no argument. They didn't even
win the Super Bowl because of Matt Stafford. It was because of Aaron Donald sacking Joe Burrow on the last play.
And it's also because he didn't have to go through frickin' Patrick Mahomes.
Guys, didn't Cooper Kupp win the Super Bowl MVP? That was the year he won the Triple Crown, I'm pretty sure.
Yes. Yeah. That was 2021. Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're talking about how that guy is not worth $15 million a year.
By the way, I'm still waiting for anyone in chat to
And yeah,
give
as
me the all-in move
JC
from the
points
Eagles.
this out great. JC points this out great too. FM picks was never true of the Rams either. It was something Les Snead had on a shirt because he traded away 2 first-rounders for Matt Stafford, which still, by the way, is poisoning the well in insane ways. I heard someone give a take that like, what are the Vikings doing? They could have put a franchise tag on Sam Darnold and traded him for a first-rounder. Nobody's giving a first-rounder up for Sam Darnold. But either way, like that was mostly a homegrown team, except then you added Matt Stafford.
I'm trying to find the last team that like I remember like an all-in move, and like what is it, the 2021 Buccaneers, because they got Tom Brady?
A lot of people are saying AJ Brown for something, or
Right. So the Eagles traded for AJ Brown in what, 2022?
Okay, so
Right.
like what did that require of them? What did they trade?
The first round pick, right?
All right, so like kind of akin to in 2022 when Brad Holmes traded a first round pick to move up.
So let me ask you:
Jameson
were
Williams.
then
For
like
Jameson
Eagles
Williams.
fans? Were Eagles fans then because they lose the Super Bowl? I mean, one of my guys I produce with on the weekends, the Eagles fan. They lost the Super Bowl, and then they had that season that followed where they won like 11 games and got bounced without a playoff win, and nobody was happy whatsoever with Sirianni.
Right.
Like, and he spent that entire offseason calling for Sirianni to get fired. He spent that entire offseason doubting that Jalen Hurts was worth the money and that like this all thing had to get blown up and everything, and that nothing was working. And like even into the season himself, the entire year he said the Eagles are gonna fuck it up. Just watch, just wait and watch. The Eagles will figure out a way to. So like.
Didn't
Cool.
Eagles fans do that with Jalen Hurts all the way up until he won the Super Bowl?
Until he won a Super Bowl, yes.
Like literally all the weeks leading up to him
That's
actually
what I'm
winning
saying.
the Super Bowl. They're like, I don't know if Jalen Hurts is that guy.
I don't want the Detroit Lions to be the fandom like the Philadelphia Eagles, minus that we have cool things like bringing giant smoked pigs onto a bus.
But the thing about the AJ Brown thing is like they didn't win a Super Bowl the year after they got AJ Brown.
No,
They did go to it, but
No, but then they lost, and then like
right.
then
the next year they took a step back.
Even more unceremoniously, and a lot of it had to do with the relationship between AJ Brown and said head coach.
And you remember like it's like, yeah, cool, they lost both their coordinators. You remember who they replaced those coordinators with, Ryan? You remember who was calling defensive plays at one point for the Eagles in 2023?
Dude, sometimes it's just luck.
That's the thing that people
refuse to believe.
Right. Guys like
and
Valeni
people
don't
love
believe.
gambling on sports. People love gambling on sports and playing Keno, but they don't believe in luck when it comes to rooting for your franchise.
And how close? And like speaking of the Rams again, like there's like a lot of good feelings about the Rams because of how close they came to beating the Eagles. Well, what if they had beaten the Eagles in the snow? Like, what would we talk about the Eagles then?
Yeah, what was the Rams all-in move then this year?
Get good drafts.
Actually having a first-round pick?
In the NFC division.
Right.
Did your phone try to answer that for you?
It did, yeah.
You know who win it all in? The 49ers with Christian McCaffrey.
For the longest time, every time I've thought about this, like one of the great legends of growing up for me watching the NFL was I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher the first name. Is it Albert or Alfred? Albert Hainsworth.
Albert, yeah.
Was Albert Hainsworth of Washington just pushing all their chips in the middle and signing a giant contract on Albert Hainsworth. And then what happened?
I am shocked that he used the Ravens as an example in there.
And then went on to say that they have accomplished nothing.
It's wild.
You haven't accomplished anything. Like, what?
No, this is part of this.
The layup is the Steelers. Just take the Steelers in that argument and you win it because it's a lazy.
No, but I know where it's coming from because I see the DNA in it. Because I mean, I've talked with Rob Parker, and like these guys literally think anything short of a Super Bowl is a failure. which there's a lot of failure then. 31 teams all fail every year. If that's your bar, then damn, it's miserable.
Yeah, right. And if
and there's not a lot of room for nuance. It's just suddenly God sends a lightning bolt from the sky, strikes a random team, and says, "Ye shall win the Super Bowl," and like everyone else is just not one of the elect.
So let's calculate all the teams that have gone all in this year, and only one of them can prove that strategy worked. So Minnesota, Chicago, New England.
We'll be generous. We'll say Washington too, even though it's really just Kinlaw. But yeah,
they traded for a guard too or something.
Oh yeah, for Tunsil. Was it Tunsil or was it?
Oh yeah, I think that's right.
Did they trade for Tunsil or was that
the Commanders?
Yeah, the Commanders traded for Tunsil. Okay, yeah.
So there are at least 4 teams already.
Laramie Tunsil is their all-in move
that have made all-in moves. And so if they don't win the Super Bowl, what does that say to the theory? All 4 of them have to win the Super Bowl this year.
Then they're going to be the Baltimore Ravens.
Seattle did not go all in.
The crazy thing is
the Browns certainly did. You could say went all in on a certain quarterback contract. How did that work out?
What if the Steelers go all in on Aaron Rodgers?
I don't like the idea of going all in on anything anymore. You should never go all in on anything.
Like, remember when the Pistons went all in on Blake Griffin?
Moderation is key to. Okay, all right. Remember when they went all in on Charlie Villanueva and Ben Gordon
and Reggie Jackson?
I'll say this: if there's a reasonable take on that side. I'm not going to call everyone on that side bots because, I get it. I get the frustration of this team not ever going to a Super Bowl. I get the idea of feeling like this team is one elite player away. And yeah, adding an elite player does get them a little bit closer to a Super Bowl. Doesn't guarantee it, which I think we can all agree, but it gets them a little bit closer. And to a lot of people, that's all that matters. One, I want to see the Lions win a Super Bowl before I die. And doing everything to push all your chips for one opportunity is good enough for a lot of people. It's not good enough for me, and to me, it doesn't increase your chances over a span of time to get to that Super Bowl, to win to a Super Bowl. I've said it multiple times. I like using this analogy. I like keeping your window open as long as possible so you have as many bites at the apple as possible because I think that's the best way to get your first Super Bowl, is to cross that threshold of having a talented enough roster so that you hope when you hit January, everything bounces in your way. Because that's what it takes to win the Super Bowl.
I've decided. It's actually Eminem's fault.
Here we go. Let me try to reverse engineer this.
This is your one opportunity, your one shot.
Oh, no. You're blaming this on 8 Mile?
Yes. Yes, I fucking am, because it's probably the only movie half these guys have seen.
Now you're calling them uncultured swine.
I don't want Marshall Mathers against this podcast.
All right. I think it's time to go. It's 10 o'clock.
It is. I need to make food and I need to get to boxing.
Y'all, I'm not sure when the midweek mailbag will be this week. I'm sure a lot of it is dependent on when news breaks. If we'll have any more press conferences this week, I don't know. But for now, plan on a pretty normal week in terms of podcasting content. Including midweek mailbag. You'll have Pride Detroit Direct subscribers should have something in their mail tomorrow morning or afternoon. I still have to kind of wrap things up there. And yeah, I think we're gonna have to start doing what I don't want to, which is we're on our way. We're on the road to the NFL
to WrestleMania.
Draft.
Oh, the draft, not WrestleMania. Okay.
Draft.
Are
we Flash Gordon?
Savior of the universe.
Draft.
Show me another Detroit Lions podcast that can recognize a Flash Gordon reference. All 3 people. None. That's the Pride of Detroit guarantee.
97.1 couldn't recognize it.
97.1.
I'm never going to get to work in Detroit radio.
You're either Killer Queen or Nothing.
Hell yeah, brother.
That- I guess I should have gone
The
Bohemian
jig
Rhapsody.
is up, the music's out, they finally found me.
Renegade Sticks?
Renegades that had me. Oh, mama, I'm a fear for my...
Karen,
That's the
you've been
next
going at it all.
karaoke song.
It's a good one.
God,
That's
it
the next
requires a lot of
karaoke.
falsetto, though.
I know. I could probably do it.
why can't we do karaoke anymore?
We can. Let's do it. It's my
We can.
birthday in a month. Let's go. Karaoke room.
It's your birthday
yeah.
in a month?
Yeah. Or maybe should I save it for 40?
How old are wait.
He'll be 39 because he's the same.
39?
He's basically the same birth year as me.
Ooh. That's exciting. Do you think the Lions will win a Super Bowl before you die?